Hello followers, and welcome to another video. This story has been in the works for a while now, and it has finally come to fruition. This is book 1 of an upcoming series, The Lore Behind Vidith 22. Enjoy. Now, let's delve into the dark together. Chapter 1. The alarm on my end table chirps angrily, its repetitions earning a just as irritated smack from me as I groggily lifted my head from my pillow. When I checked my phone, I was delighted to see that I had a few solid hours before I had to go to my job, which started at, unfortunately, midnight, and the current time was 7:45 p.m. You see, I work as a closer/overnight security guard for the Mothman Museum, a job that I constantly joke around about with the day crew that come in around 7 in the morning. They always ask me if I've ever seen the Mothman, and I play around with them, sometimes saying that we have drinks every other night, or that he steals my pens. We laugh, and we go our separate ways, and we do it all again the next time we see one another. I'm pulled from my reverie when I heard a chuff from the side of my bed, and when I looked down, my Shiba Inu, Jericho, was looking up at me with faux indignation. I chuckled and swung my legs over the side and stood up, stretching my arms up to loosen the muscles in my back before I looked down at him. "All right, you big baby, let's get you something to eat," came my groggy response. Jericho chuffed and rose to his paws before padding out of my room, with me following him closely. After feeding him his evening meal, I walked over to the bathroom to take a shower and get ready for the day. Now, for proper introductions. My name is Matthew Traeger, and if my workplace hasn't made it obvious as to where I live in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, home of the Mothman. While I'm not super hip with cryptids, I've been here long enough to know some things about this particular resident cryptid. I stepped out of the shower, wiping the mirror clean of fog to style my long blonde hair so it's not in my face, and I take time to admire myself after I put my glasses on my face. I have a slim build, keeping toned by my daily workouts and eating right, though I do have some tattoos on myself, most notably a coffin with a lit candle in the center of the lid on my upper chest, a full sleeve of a scroll on my right arm, and the alchemy symbol for fire on the back of my left hand. With practiced ease, I style my hair into loose battle braids and finish by doing them up in a long ponytail, before leaving the washroom to get dressed in my work clothes, hoping to have enough time to make myself something quick to eat. After I was dressed, I checked my phone, which read 8:10 p.m. Perfect. I had enough time to eat something before work. I flicked through DoorDash on my phone, settling on our Lord and Savior McDonald's, before grabbing my sling bag and setting it on the table, beginning to pack some essentials for the night. Batteries, an electronic lantern, some energy drinks, and my sweatshirt, before sitting down on the couch to watch an episode or two of Secret Level while I waited for my food. Jericho laid down on my feet, dozing off like the lazy butt munch he is, before my phone buzzed, indicating that my food had arrived. I stood up and walked to the door, opening it to collect the bag and drink that sat on my doormat, when I noticed that the delivery driver's car was still there. I waved at him, giving a thumbs up to indicate that I got everything, then went back inside, not noticing that the car and its occupants didn't leave right away. I sat down and tore into the 2 cheeseburgers I ordered, continuing to watch my show, until the alarm I set to leave chirped at me. I poured Jericho's food for the night, ensured his water was full, closed my bedroom door, and rubbed Jericho's head before I departed, locking my front door and getting into my 1970 light gray El Camino, starting the muscle car before driving off to get to the museum on time. I pulled up to the museum around 10 minutes before I could clock in, giving me ample time to set my stuff in the security office upstairs and check the board for my tasks. After waving hello to Ollie, the night janitor, I climbed up the stairs to the office, using my key card to unlock the door. It was empty, as usual, as the guard before me, Kaysen, was never there when I showed up, which was typical. After getting situated and seeing no unique tasks for the night, I walked down to the clock to check in, noting that Ollie was absent when I made it to the clock. After scanning my fingerprints and getting clocked in, I began to start the closing process. so I don't bore you with the details, I'll simplify it for you all. I lock up the doors, close the inner shutters, and lock those as well. Switch the camera systems from day to night, which turn on their infrared and night vision capabilities, and after all of that, I settled in at my console and flipped through each feed, monitoring external cameras for a majority of the night, while mixing in patrols on the floor every other hour. 3 hours into my shift, the eastern camera chirped at me, indicating there was movement detected. I pulled my chair over and tapped the console to bring the feed up. The screen glowed a nauseating shade of green to indicate that the camera was in night vision mode. There on the feed sat a white van, unmarked and unoccupied, but one that hadn't been there some minutes prior. Nervously, I flicked through the other feeds, hoping to spot the interlopers, but found nothing. This can't be happening, I thought to myself when I realized I couldn't locate the occupants of the van. That was when I heard a crash from the floor below me, and the blood in my veins turned to ice. Someone was inside the building with me. I grabbed my lantern and went to the locker by the door, fumbling with the keys for a few terrifying seconds before I slid the right one into the lock, swinging the door open to grab the nightstick and mace within before stuffing them into my belt. Yes, before you ask, I have not been issued a gun. Mainly because I don't go shooting often, and my employers have not scheduled me for my certification yet, so these two are the best I have. After closing the locker, I swiped my keycard to unlock the office door and exit, my electric lantern held up in front of me to illuminate the dark hallway ahead of me. Slowly, I made my way down the hall, careful not to break into a nervous jog and alert the intruders. When I reached the stairs, I descended them quickly and quietly, able to catch snippets of conversation from ahead, confirming that there were at least 2 or 3 people present.
"You think anyone else is here?"
asked one voice, young and accented, while another one responds bluntly.
"Aside from the guard, no. There shouldn't be anyone else here besides us and him. So shut your gob and get that stuff in here."
This gave me pause. Who could these people be? Surely they're not the deep clean crew. They weren't supposed to be here for another week. Unless my employers were able to successfully reschedule and not notify me. But then again, they were wearing the deep cleaning company's uniforms despite their van being unmarked, which still didn't help the situation. Gathering my encouragement, I called out into the hallway. "Hello? Who's there? I'd like to see you and your group, as well as some identification, please." The conversation stopped, only for the gruff voice to respond.
"Apologies, boss man. We just arrived. We were in the process of unloading our gear. Give us one moment."
After a minute of shuffling and muffled curses, 3 men stepped into view. Sure enough, they were dressed in the deep cleaning crew's coveralls and showed their IDs to prove it. I inwardly relaxed, knowing now my anxiety-addled assumptions were wrong. I showed them to the supply closet, where the rest of the equipment we kept on site is stored, before turning to walk away. But before I could make it to the door, the one with the gruff voice called after me.
"Your name's Traeger, yeah? Matthew Traeger?"
I paused, my heart beating a tad bit faster, before I responded slowly. Yeah, it is. Why?" was all I could get out, before a gnarled hand clapped a rag over my nose and mouth. My eyes widened, unconsciously breathing in the drug, before I drew my baton and whacked him between his legs. He gags and collapses, writhing in pain while I coughed and sputtered, vision blurry as I blindly swing my baton to and fro, hoping I could hit the other 2 with no success, as they grabbed and disarmed me, putting a bag over my head before the drug finally took hold, losing grip on consciousness and slipping into the void entirely. Chapter 2. When I came to, I was being dragged through a dungeon-like hallway, the expanse made of stone and lined with torch sconces, which cast eerie light down its length. I lifted my head, finding that my hands were cuffed together, and I was being dragged by 2 black-robed people, their faces hidden by horrific masks, depicting horribly deformed faces, something out of a Lovecraftian script. I weakly pulled on their vice grips, but they didn't yield. growling at me to knock it off as we continued onward, taking a left turn and towards a set of ornate double doors, decorated with images of a tentacled beast with red eyes. When the doors opened, there were dozens of similarly clothed cultists, chanting in a language I couldn't even begin to comprehend, while their leader wore a gold-trimmed robe with crimson and black as its primary colors. He spoke English, preaching in a fervent voice filled with devotion.
His unyielding gaze from the void pierces every single one of us this day, brothers and sisters. His existence as a whole gives us purpose, and in return, we must give him those that we deem worthy to be consumed by his majesty. And here,
And he points to me as I was dragged up to the profane altar before being forced down onto my knees before it,
is the one we shall give him.
A few of the crowd roared in response, every single one of their faces hidden behind the various masks they wore, their visages ranging from screaming faces to grinning demons, and everything in between. The high cultist pulled my ponytail, yanking my head back to gaze down into my eyes, his voice smug.
You will make a fine offering, boy. Rejoice, for your body will further his grand design.
He releases my hair and walked towards a worn leather tome, unclasping and opening it before he began to chant, the vile foreign words rolling off his tongue as the Lovecraftian sigils on the rim of the ring-like frame began to glow a deep crimson, starting from the ground and slowly making their way from each side to meet at the top middle. I struggled against the binds, even as two sets of hands kept me still, my heart pounding out of my chest as the runes met. The gateway opened, the chanting ceasing abruptly, every single eye fixed on the vile portal. Slowly, ever so slowly, a black tentacle unfurls from the gateway, dark ooze dripping from the incomprehensible limb. I felt like I was about to have a heart attack, tears running down my face as the limb reached for me, before pausing, as if appraising, before it shoots forward as fast as lightning to wrap around my face, muffling my scream, before I felt myself get yanked forward, swallowed wholly by the unholy portal. Chapter 3. Is it possible to go mad from pure agony? Because I feel like that should have been the case due to the excruciating pain I felt for what felt like an eternity. I floated in an abyss, writhing and screaming soundlessly as I could feel blades of ice and fire dig into my very being, tearing me open like a predator would its prey. I could feel, no, see memories that weren't mine. Faces, places, jobs, husbands, wives, kids, pets. Oh, fuck. I screamed out, feeling the hot, cold knife twist again, sending pure agony down my back, a paralyzing pain. But through it all, I heard a voice, a vile, dripping voice that gurgled when it spoke to me.
Now, what do we have here? After so long, I have another chance to finally be free.
Before I could even demand who or what this thing was, I felt it burrowing into my mind like a parasite. My voice cracked so badly from my screams I tasted blood. The sickly, coppery taste was all I could taste before the sheer pain that assaulted me finally knocked me out cold. The blessedly sweet embrace blanketing me in full. When I came to, I found myself lying on a footpath in one of the sections of campsites near town, staring up at the twilight-colored skies above. I bolted upright, patting myself down to ensure that I wasn't missing any limbs before recoiling in pain when I caressed my midsection.
and when I peeled my sweat-soaked shirt off my body, I was horrified to see a massive V-shaped scar smack in the center of my midsection, perfectly between my chest and stomach. It was an angry red color and tender to the touch. I carefully slipped my shirt back on myself, making sure not to irritate the scar, before getting up and jogging back towards town, delighted to see that it also wasn't far from my home either. As soon as I made it back into town, I flicked my head around to orient myself before hurrying off in the direction of my work, where my car should still be. To my delight, it was, though I had to figure out how to get back inside to get my bag, which had my keys, and I didn't have my keycard anymore, so I'll have to improvise. I entered the museum and spotted Ollie, who looked confused to see me, but waved nonetheless. I hurried up to him, giving him an apologetic smile.
Hey, Ollie, mind if you can open the office for me? I left my bag and stuff in there.
But Ollie didn't move, but stared at me, and I could see he was trembling in fear. Realizing that he wasn't going to help me, I swiped the keycard from his lanyard and ran up the hall, trying to keep it quick, as I assumed he would call the police. Swiping the key, I burst in and grabbed my backpack and keys, and for extra measure, I swiped the backup baton from my locker as well, before slipping out the back door and around to the front of the building, making a beeline for my car. I unlocked it and threw my bag and baton into the passenger seat before slamming the door, starting the car up and peeling out of the parking lot, heading home to try and parse out what the hell happened to me while I was unconscious. Jericho greeted me with fervent barks when I came inside, his face crinkled in a permanent look of annoyance. I murmured an apology and rubbed his head before shambling to the kitchen to feed him, my mind going a million miles a minute trying to figure out what happened to me. I still couldn't genuinely believe what just happened. How could I? A fucking Lovecraftian monster yanked me into the Shadow Realm. Yeah, right. They had to have drugged me or something, because that can't possibly be possible. And the scar on my abdomen can probably be a burn, maybe. It felt sore to the touch still, and felt hot like a burn, but every now and then it felt cold, like someone was pressing ice to the scar. I went into the bathroom to shower, peeling off my mud-caked clothes before stepping into the basin, allowing the lukewarm water to cascade down my body, washing away the mud and filth from my extended dirt nap. Luckily, the scar did not get irritated by the temperature, and seemed to stop throbbing after a while, which felt so good. But the comfort didn't last, and when I was allowing my hair to dry in the steaming air, my blood chilled in my veins when I heard tentative tapping of claws on the bathroom window. The incessant tap, tap, tap of the unseen assailant caused me to freeze in place, and my heartbeat thundered in my chest. And when I finally had the guts to rip the shower curtain away, there was nothing there but branches tapping on the window, from the rainstorm that had been brewing since I woke up on the trail some hours ago. The winds that came with it, blowing the trees outside, having them tap on the window. Relaxing, I stepped out of the shower to dry off and change into clean clothes, but paused when I saw a barely noticeable scratch on the outer window in the shape of a V. Anxiety gnawed at me a bit, but the branches scratched against the window again, scratching out the V, and the anxiety melted away. I tied my hair back and exited the bathroom, listening to the rain pound on the roof as I crossed into the living room to flick on something to watch while I heated up leftovers from a few nights ago, while Jericho lounged on his bed, asleep, slowly melting back into my routine. The dream. Yeah, it had to have been a dream. After finishing my leftovers, I turned off all the lights in the house, resigning myself to sleep away the night, and hopefully things would get back to normal. I walked into my room and took time to boot up my PC and check emails, humming an idle tune as I did so. Most were just spam emails, and at least 2 were requests for videos I could do in my spare time, which I started to save,
before shutting it down and laying on my bed, staring up at the ceiling as the rain continued to pour down from the heavens. Its soothing sound lulling me, finally, into a dreamless sleep. Chapter 4. When the next morning came, still swathed in rain, my eyes cracked open, and I stretched my arms, groaning as my aching bones creaked and popped before sitting up and checking the time, which read 10:12 a.m. Not too late, but definitely not too early as well, which is a first for me. I swung my legs out of bed and got up, Jericho lifting his head from his bed to watch me as I opened the door to my bedroom and exit into the living room, only to discover that the power had gone out sometime during the evening, which, yes, did annoy me, but that's what came with the territory this far into Appalachia. So, all I had to do was to bear it until it came back on. So I grabbed my lantern from my backpack and flicked it on, going into the pantry to fish out a bag of pretzels to munch on for the time being after I poured Jericho his dry food for the morning. I walked to each door, making sure that they're locked up, and returned to the living room to read a book or lounge while I waited for the power to come back on. Flipping through a comic book, I paused when I heard what I thought was a low, deep chuckle that seemed to drift up my hallway, and I slowly stood up, grabbing my lantern in one hand and my baton in the other, before I began to creep towards the hallway, the chuckle continuing more and more, growing more fervent and manic, until the chuckle grew into a howling laughter. I swung around the corner, baton raised to strike, and the laughter abruptly ceased. The hallway was empty, and my heartbeat continued to hammer in my chest, as well as my sweaty, clammy hands shaking at the realization that no one was in here with me. I backed away from the hallway, the darkness seeming to grow, creeping up the expanse towards me.
Well, what do we have here? A personal meat suit that thinks he can fight the darkness. How adorable. The voice, that wretched, slimy voice that was laced with malice and glee, slithered into my very mind, no, my soul, and rooted me to the spot. I swore I could see red eyes, reptilian and vile, glaring back at me, and when I finally broke the paralysis, I yanked the lantern up, and the darkness was gone, just as abruptly as it came. Or was it there to begin with? I don't fucking know anymore. I slammed the hall door and backed away, still shaking and breathing shallowly. What the fuck is happening to me? I sat back on the couch, drawing my knees to my chest, slowly trying to control my breathing as I gradually came down from my near panic attack, my heartbeat returning to normal after about 10 minutes of this. Steeling myself, I pulled the hallway door open again, only for the hallway to remain the same. Resigning that this was another mental episode, I flicked the light switch to find that the power was still off. Grumbling in mild annoyance, I returned once again to the couch and flopped long ways onto it, allowing my eyes to close, simply intending on taking a short nap. My eyes snapped open, moonlight flooding in through the windows and into the living room. How long have I been asleep for? Was the question I mentally demanded myself as I groped around for my phone, which had fallen onto the ground sometime when I was asleep. When I finally got a hold of it, the screen illuminated the time. 3:30 p.m. I've been asleep for 6 hours. I swore and got up, feeling along the wall in the hallway, when my fingers accidentally hit the switch, and the resulting flashbang elicited a flurry of curses from my throat as the lights came back on, effectively blinding me where I stood. After smacking the switch off, I blinked the resulting eye floaters out of my vision, not taking into account that I could see several red V's among the floaters I vanquished after the trio of blinks. I went into my bedroom, casting my eyes around to see if everything was still there, and relaxed when I saw that nothing was missing or out of place.
I let Jericho out, set a pot of ramen to boil on the stove, and sat on the couch, swiping through my emails, not seeing anything from my workplace about my absences. And since the cops haven't come to see me yet, I can safely assume that Ollie didn't call the cops, but somehow felt strange to me. Jericho tapped into the room after I closed the back door behind him. I walked into the kitchen to stir the ramen a bit, my mind wandering to odd places while I stood idly, trying to justify what I had been seeing or hearing, to no avail, before pouring the ramen into a bowl and going into the living room and sitting on the couch, flipping on the TV and scrolling to Invincible, having had the intention to catch up on the series as a whole. I finished the ramen at around the 5th episode mark, so I got up to take it to the sink when a light bulb came to me. Kaysen's bi-monthly party happens around this time, and since I can't sleep, might as well, right? I quickly got my leather jacket on and laced up my boots before grabbing my cold steel brand walking stick that had a wicked dragon's head topped on the staff before heading out. My mom and dad bought it for me before I went away for college, saying that it can be used for self-defense, which brings me comfort somehow. I walked several blocks before I could see the closed-down shopping mall that these admittedly wild parties take place in, mentally preparing myself. After entering the mall, the sound of Castlevania's music bumping through the speakers rumbled through my very being, feeling the bass rattle my guts. I tapped the bottom of my staff to the beats of the song Blood Code by the latter-mentioned artist, bobbing my head a bit to the beat as I wove my way through the crowd. After battling through the mass of dancing bodies and through unseen clouds of alcohol scents, I found an overlook on the second floor, casting my gaze out over the impressive crowd that had gathered for this evening, though I didn't see Kaysen, the proprietor of this gathering of base and bad choices, sipping a cup of punch after ensuring it had 0 alcohol in it, because, unlike the others gathered here, I value my liver, thank you very much. I temporarily forgot the weird shit that had been happening for the past few days after I woke up in the wilderness. I was on my way to get my 3rd solo cup of Hawaiian punch when the music abruptly cut off, replaced by radio crackling, like something akin to an old World War I or II radio broadcast.
Hey, who the hell switched the tunes off?
Shouted one patron, while another called out in response.
Told you he's fucking clueless. Must have bumped the wrong thing. Now his lizard brain can't begin to comprehend what he did.
Irritated shouts and protests filled the packed hall for a few minutes, and I finally procured my solo cup of juice, before an eerie, haunting female voice filled the hall. Confusion raced through the crowd, everyone trying to figure out what exactly was happening, and a sinking feeling crept into my chest. This felt familiar somehow, like I've heard it before somewhere. The broadcast didn't cease, continuing its monotone mantra. The gnawing feeling grew as I started to move to the nearest exit, but judging by the sound of banging fists on doors, something tells me that this wasn't going the way we think it'll go. Frantic shouting suffused the room and the broadcast pause that followed, signaling how bad this was starting to get. I gripped the staff in my hands tightly before the next stanza came, more grim than the last. The voice in the broadcast sounded more frantic, but not by much, something that I'm sure everyone picked up on, and their effort redoubled. Each subsequent stanza that followed after that one, worse and worse, until one particular one was followed by something horrific. When that stanza ended, the lights went out, sending the gathered people into a frenzy. By this time, I was on the ground floor finally, trying to avoid getting trampled, but the sound of a wet, gurgling growl sliced through the cries and shouts, rendering everyone silent and immobile. When the red low lights came on, it illuminated a hunched-over form, a stanza playing through the speakers. Silence came, save for the hunched figure's labored breathing. No one dared to approach him or her at first, until one brave soul crept out of the crowd, taking tentative steps towards the figure.
Hey, you alright, dude? You don't look too good. You get sick or something?
His hand reaches out, but stops mere inches from the heaving mass. And even from the distance I was at, as well as the low-light conditions, I could see the color drain from his face, as well as his eyes widen in pure fear. His next words leave his mouth in a panicked shout. What the fuck?
before an ivory talon as thick as my staff's bottom was rammed with force into his mouth and out of the back of his head, spraying the gathering behind him in grey matter, skull fragments, and gore, eliciting screams of revulsion and fear from those in the splash zone. The figure stands itself up at full height, easily 7 or 8 feet tall, a blade-tipped tail lashing from side to side behind it. When I saw its head lift to gaze up at the ceiling, it had gnarled, twisted antlers that looked more deformed than natural. It turned to look at all of us, and I felt bile rise in my throat. They didn't have just one head, but 3. All 3 heads were fused together and writhing, and all 3 were the same, that of deer heads. Their flesh badly decayed and fused to one another, their jaws working independently in silent agony and rage. But the middle head gazed at all of us, its black eyes devoid of any curiosity, but full of malice. Everyone was silent for a heartbeat before the beast, using all 3 heads, screeched at us all, sending the gathered crowd into a panicked frenzy. The beast began to swing its talons and tail, cutting down partygoers like a farmer would cut down wheat with a scythe, coating the floor in guts and gore as it went. I took this opportunity to begin to run towards an exit, which was violently thrown open when the beast gave chase and flung a half-eaten body at the fleeing crowd, miraculously missing all of us and striking the door instead. With the final declaration, the mall began to fall apart, and I, as well as many others, flung ourselves out of the exit, saving ourselves from the fate of being devoured or being crushed, unlike so many unfortunate souls within. I scrambled up onto my feet, heartbeat hammering to the point of shattering my ribs, and my hands shaking so badly I almost whacked myself in the jaw with my walking stick, which I somehow kept hold of throughout the ordeal, like some comfort object or protective ward against evil or some shit. I only registered reality when I heard sirens approaching. When the police, fire, and paramedics arrived, they had their work cut out for them to account for the living, as well as the dead. And when the police went around to take statements, everyone told them the same thing, that a monster began to kill the patrons, as well as the mysterious broadcast from the DJ equipment. But every single time they heard this, they dismissed it as drunken illusions or whatever they called it. So when they came to me, I told them that I was out here when it occurred, and that I was only witness to the building's collapse. They took that without question, only advising me to see some counsel for the trauma. When I got home, I sat on the couch, unable to get the screams and the scent of blood from my mind. I grabbed my cell phone and dialed a number, listening to the ringing tone before a voice answered.
Blackwood Psychiatrics, how may we assist you today?
I took a deep breath before speaking. Hello? I need some help. I've been hearing voices, seeing things. The voice didn't waste any time in their response.
Of course, we will help you however we can. Please, let's get you set up for a meeting.
Chapter 5.
I opened my front door after 6 months of being away from home at Blackwood Penitentiary, breathing the familiar air in like a breath of life. I went to call out to Jericho, but stopped myself. Ever since I went away, my parents had taken him to make sure he's well taken care of. So on one hand, he's safe and well looked after, but on the other hand, it's so fucking lonely without him. And I don't think I'll ever get used to being without him. He's always there for me. I went to the bathroom to take a well-deserved shower. Since that place had cold water only, it felt wonderful to remove the remnants of my stay from my body. After tying my hair back, I exited the bathroom, not wearing a shirt because my dumbass forgot to grab one, and as I crossed the hall to my room, I remembered what one of my few tasks were, recording the days after coming home. I tossed on a hoodie, slipped my slippers on, and sat on the bed after setting up the camera, exhaling before looking at the device, giving it an uneasy smile. Hello there. It's been a while. Finally home from Blackwood. And I don't have to be dealing with them for a while, if all goes well. As for my affliction, this thing, this Vidith, isn't real. He never has, and he never will. They gave me medication to help with my insomnia and nightmares, and I always need to take it before I go to bed. Otherwise, well, nothing gets accomplished, now will it? Anyway, that's all for now. See you when I record next. After pausing the recording and exporting it to my PC, I scrolled through my emails, humming idly as I lazily scrolled, favoriting some, deleting others, and overall falling back into my original routine, as if I had never left. After finishing that, I ordered some food for delivery, and spent the rest of the afternoon and some of the first twilight hours cleaning up some of the dust and replacing the old sheets, rugs, and what have you. After everything was done, I slipped into some night clothes and entered my bedroom, only to pause when I saw that there was a crudely scratched V on the window across from my bed. But upon further inspection, it was simply a coincidental pattern of other scratches. Relieved, I went to my bed and slipped in, staring up at the roof for a handful of minutes before finally turning on my side and falling asleep. After a handful of weeks had gone by, I'd been able to record about 10 or 12 recordings from my handler, the person overseeing my medication and treatment, to ensure that the tabs are working as intended, which definitely sounds less than comforting, but so far nothing sideways has happened yet. So that's good. My mouse flits across its pad, composing an email to send to them by moving the files into the field when my eyes spotted something quite peculiar. A file named log13.mov. That's curious. I don't recall recording a 13th log. I mused to myself, dragging it and saving it to my desktop to view later while I finished composing the email and sending it off, closing the mail site and staring at the rogue file, unsure if I should open it or not. And when I inspected the contents, a sentence stared back at me. "Allow me to tell you a story, Matthew." I felt the hackles on the back of my neck start to raise. Nervous anxiety creeping through my gut, turning it into an icy lump. I forced myself to get up and go into the kitchen for a glass of water to calm my nerves, and when I entered the living room, I spotted a vaguely familiar white box van sitting further down the dirt path from my house. Quick context, I live off the beaten path, a tad bit secluded from the rest of the town, so my house has a dirt and gravel driveway that leads from the road to my front, and I have a bottom barn on the left side of my house where I keep my El Camino out of the elements. Context aside, I couldn't fathom why this van was on the path. Against my better judgment, I exit my home, walking stick in hand as I strode towards the van. An older gentleman with a Dr. Phil haircut rolled down the window, giving me a polite smile before asking in a soft-spoken voice,
Excuse me, sir. Does Tabitha Saxton live at or near this address?
Blinking in surprise, I cracked a disarmed smile and responded in just as a polite voice as he has. "Afraid you have the wrong address, friend. I live there, and I don't recall a Tabitha living here, though I do know someone with the last name Saxton, my coworker, Ollie." The stranger chuckled heartily and nodded.
Oh, so you know our grandson. That's good. Afraid he's always elusive, as you say. Doesn't really like interacting with people as much as a normal person should. Anyways, thanks a lot, son. Let's say, what's your name, by the way? Ollie mentioned having a fellow security guard, but never could remember the name.
I shifted, growing comfortable around this polite old-timer, so I humored him out of common courtesy. Name's Matt. Full name Matthew Traeger. Pleasure to meet you, Mr.
Oliver Saxton. Pleasure to meet you, son.
We shook hands, and I waved Oliver farewell as he started the van and flipped a U, heading back to the main road and disappearing from sight. Going back inside, I silently chastised myself for being so skittish, closing the front door and locking it up as night was on the horizon. I popped a trio of Tina's frozen burritos in the air fryer on the counter and sat on the edge of the counter, scrolling through Twitter to see what sideways shit's going on today. After the food was done, I walked back into my room and sat down at the desk, my eyes landing on the rogue file. This file should not exist, yet here it is, mocking me. And after gnawing through the second burrito, I hovered the cursor over the file, and my index finger inches away from the left click button, doing my best to psych myself up to play it. Just play it already. Stop being such a pussy, dude. It's a video file. What's it gonna do? Kill you like the bitch from The Ring? My rational self hissed at me, and I double-clicked the file, and the window opened, buffering for around a minute before finally beginning to play. It showed me sitting on my bed, but instead of my hoodie, like always, I wore a generic white t-shirt, my head lowered to hide my face. My double said nothing for a few seconds before he began to speak. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all of its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of the black seas of the infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. I blinked in surprise, hearing that my voice in the recording sounded confident, yet tired. Then I saw the timestamp. 1:04 a.m. What the fuck was I doing up? I don't recall being up that late at all, not even before being admitted into Blackwood. I don't have time to ponder, as my double spoke again, another quote that was extremely familiar to me. I could not help but feel that they were evil things, mountains of madness whose farther slopes looked out over some accursed ultimate abyss. That seething, half-luminous cloud background held ineffable suggestions of a vague, ethereal beyondness, far more than terrestrially spatial, and gave appalling reminders of the utter remoteness, separateness, desolation, and eon-long of this untrodden and unfathomable astral world. My head lifts, and my heart seized in my chest. His eyes were blazing red, and the grin that stretched across its mouth was lined with teeth that looked to be needles. It spoke to me, its voice now that vile, slithering voice that I hadn't heard in months. And it kept me rooted to my chair, tears welling in my eyes and my mouth open in pure terror.
Hello, meat suit. I told you when we were in that forsaken prison that those medications will do nothing. Because you can do nothing. I flinched in reflex, a roar having echoed in the voice of Vidith, that eldritch demon that had bonded with me that fateful night. I couldn't rebuke, so Vidith continued, standing up from the bed in the recording. I am inevitable, eternal. I am the storyteller. I am the reason your miserable existence online is surviving. But I do know of a way out, per se. A way for us to benefit from this agreement. All you have to do is to do whatever I say, no matter what. Disobey. Well, you will want to know what I'll do to get you back on track. But just for motivation.
Pain flared from my chest as the V-shaped scar began to burn like I was being branded with a hot iron, a ragged scream being torn from my lungs. I ripped the shirt off of my body and looked down to look at it, horrified to see the scar glowing a deep crimson. When the glow and pain finally subsided, my eyes locked with Vidith's on screen, who had a shit-eating grin on his face again.
Now, do you get it? I suggest you get some sleep, meat suit. It's going to be a busy next few days. Sleep tight, and don't let the monsters bite.
And the window closes, sparing me from seeing that visage any more of my alternate. I bolted up and scrambled back, practically bawling like a child who suffered their first nightmare. I remembered him coming to me in Blackwood, scolding me about the medications derailing my focus, and his promise of a way out of that facility. In an act of desperation, I had accepted, and after muttering those horrible words he had me repeat, and I lost consciousness, only to be woken up by the facility nurse. From that day until now, I never heard from him. It, until now.
I grabbed my phone to call the handler, only to find to my horror that their contact was deleted, and the backup of their number was gone too. Panicking, I wrote a hasty email to them and sent it, only to get a response almost instantly. "We're sorry, but this account does not exist. Please check the recipient and try again." Panic seized my entire being, my vision going blurry and my breathing shallow and frantic. I was having a panic attack. I couldn't comprehend the sound of someone knocking on my front door, all sound replaced by the combination of my pounding blood and the tinnitus-like screeing that made me deaf to anything else. I stepped back, but my foot caught the side table and I fell hard, the side of my head slamming into the edge of the table. Blackness enveloped me, and the last thing I heard was Vidith's taunting last words.
Sleep tight, and don't let the monsters bite.
Chapter 6. I groaned as my eyes opened groggily, my shades having been drawn to keep out the assaultive light of the outside world. I went to grab my phone, only to brush the rim of a drinking glass that hadn't been there before. After allowing my eyes to adjust, I looked to the glass, only to find that said glass wasn't the only thing. With it was a sticky note, as well as 2 aspirin. I grabbed the sticky note and held it up after snapping on my lantern, whose light was softer and less harsh on my eyes than my table lamp. Reading the note left on it. "Forgive the intrusion. A mutual friend of yours tipped us off to something going on with you, having heard screaming coming from here. I've left you something for the headache you're bound to have after taking that spill. If you're feeling better, text this number. We can talk more later. A friend." Under the writing was a phone number, an out-of-state number. Colorado, to be exact. I took the aspirin and drained the glass, grateful for my mystery helper's aid before lying my head down to allow the medicine to take effect over the next few hours. Once I felt better, then when I woke up, I sat up and grabbed my phone, inputting the mystery number into my texts, and after a minute of deep breathing, I finally sent the text. "Hello?" Immediately, I got a response. "Hello. I hope you're feeling better than when we found you." I gulped a bit, but I urged myself to keep going. "I do feel better, yeah. Thanks. Your note told me we could talk more. What exactly are we going to talk about?" The next response came after around a minute of nothing, though it was a question rather than an answer. "You know that diner near the museum? How about we talk over lunch? My treat. How does 2 p.m. sounds today?" This caught me off guard, but at the same time, my stomach grumbled angrily. And to be truthful, I did intend on trying that place this person was talking about, so I typed a quick response. "Yeah, I know it, and sounds good. See you there, I guess." How do I know it'll be you that comes up to me, though? The final response from this mystery person was playful in a way, with one word. Stetson. Before the responses ceased, I gazed at the clock on my phone, whose clock said 1:03 p.m. More than enough time to freshen up. After showering and getting dressed, I grabbed my baton and stuffed it into my belt, hiding it with my leather jacket, before grabbing my walking staff and keys before departing for lunch with a stranger. I pulled up to the diner and made my way inside, picking a booth in the very back. When the waitress came to ask for my order, I only asked for a bottle of soda, explaining that I was waiting for someone. She smiles and walks off to get my soda, returning soon after with a bottle of Coca-Cola, the one with real sugar, not the substitution. As I sip at the soda, my eyes nervously flick to everyone that entered, hoping that my mystery person comes in soon. I pulled my phone out and sent a quick, "I'm here" text, but yelped when a smooth, friendly voice asked from in front of my table. "Is he taken?" When I looked at the owner of the voice, and the first thing I saw was the nice Stetson hat on his head, which was a black color. This was him. I shook my head and he slipped across from me, removing his hat to show off tri-colored hair, brown with streaks of white and gray. His beard, while well trimmed, was colored the same. His green eyes glitter like a cat's, along with a quick, easy smile he shot my way, eased me just a bit. He then spoke, his voice level and warm. "So nice to meet you, Mr. Traeger. My name is Fletcher King." He holds out a hand to shake, and I noticed that the fingers, palm, and back of his hand were scarred. Whether from cooking or losing multiple games of five-finger fillet, who knows. But I shake his hand anyway, admiring his firm yet grateful gesture. "You could call me Matthew, or Matt, either or. But thank you for the aspirin and helping me into bed after my, episode. Fletcher smiles, leaning back and nodding.
Don't mention it. Believe it or not, I'm familiar with your work. Well, my daughter is. She listens to your work religiously.
I felt a slight swell of pride, but hardened when his gaze did as well. With that same smoothness, he wasted no time.
All right. Now that we're acquainted, let's talk. You're wondering what that could be, aren't you?
I nodded wordlessly, and Fletcher continued.
Well, me and my group want to help you in any way we can, but you need to tell me what's been going on.
I tried to have a dumb look on my face, but it didn't seem convincing enough because Fletcher smiled ruefully.
Can't fool me, man. I know that look. This isn't my first rodeo.
I looked down in embarrassment before mumbling,
You'll think I'm crazy.
only for Fletcher to lean forward, grinning.
Try me.
After telling him everything I knew from before Blackwood and after, as well as the rogue recording, Fletcher didn't seem perturbed, but interested in this, a glitter in his eye and a half-smile fluttering on his face. When I was done, he rubbed his hands together and chuckled softly.
Well, this is gonna be fun. Don't worry, I don't think you're crazy. We've had more interesting cases and challenges. Me and mine will look into it for the time being, and you have my number. So if you ever need to talk, or you need help, text me. We'll come knocking, alright?
I nod gratefully before thanking him for lunch and departing the diner to head home, which didn't take long at all. And for the first time in a bit, I felt comfortable, especially with lunch in my stomach. Gotta go there more often. Their grilled ham and cheeses are wonderful. I hung up my walking staff as well as my jacket, bolted the door, and strode into the kitchen to put aside the dishes that were in the dishwasher, humming the third movement of Moonlight Sonata, allowing my mind to drift while I moved. Fletcher did mention of multiple people he worked with, yet he did not speak of their names and their association to him. I also saw, but did not bring up, that he had been armed, a large revolver on his hip, though that in of itself was not uncommon. Once I finished my work, I went to my room to respond to client emails, as well as edit files and proofread. I spent a few solid hours working, finishing up with scheduling and uploading for tomorrow morning, when I got a text. The moment I looked down, I froze. The message was a simple, yet threatening sentence.
Hello, boss man. Been a while, eh?
I remember the word boss man very well. It was used by one of those goons that came to my work that night. I immediately screenshot the text and shoot it off to Fletcher, telling him that these guys were who kidnapped me from work. He responded quickly, telling me to keep calm, ensure my doors and windows were locked, and that he had people on the way to help. I thanked him and went about doing just that, locking all of my windows and making sure that the front and back doors were locked before shutting all the curtains and blinds on all the windows, finally retreating to my room, digging around in my closet to see if I had the old hockey gear one of my college roommates had given to me. And upon finding it, I quickly geared up, looking like a much older version of Dustin Henderson, minus the hockey stick, and hunkered down in my room for the next few hours. I could feel my phone buzzing insistently in my pocket, but didn't dare to look down to respond, afraid a sniper would take my head off if I got distracted. But when I realized that the buzzing wasn't a text, but a phone call, I ducked down and looked to see who it was, and felt my heart drop when I saw it was my dad calling. I played the voicemail, heart beating a million miles a minute in anxiety.
Hey Matthew, it's Dad. Hope everything's okay. Your mom and I are worried about you, and we haven't heard from you. Call back soon.
I immediately dialed him back, listening to the ringing tone for way too long before it went to voicemail. I tried again 3 more times with the same result. Panicking now, I shoot another text to Fletcher about it, and he responded, asking where they lived. I responded that they lived in Boston, and he sent a thumbs up. I could only hope, but my reverie was shaken when I heard a vehicle pull up and firm knock on the door. I didn't respond to the door, afraid to see the barrel of a gun in my face if I did open it. I texted Fletcher to see if his people were here, but he said they were still 5 minutes out. But I heard the vehicle leave, and when I did peek out the front window, I saw no cars. My phone buzzed, and I looked down to read the text. My people saw a van leave the access road. They have eyes on your home. Don't worry, you're not supposed to see them. And that works for the people who are harassing you as well. They'll stay around for a few hours, then we'll leave. I'll update you on your folks' status. I thanked him, inwardly relaxing a few ticks, and I began to shed the football gear from myself, setting my baton down on my side table as I did so. But the peace was ruined when I looked in the standing mirror, and I saw the grinning reflection of myself, that shit-eating grin wearing me out all the while. Finally, I sat down in front of the mirror, a sneer on my face in reality.
What the fuck do you want now? I have enough to worry about already without you fucking around.
My anger was boiling over, and yet that demon grinned wider and wider. And when he spoke, it didn't help at all.
What's wrong? Are you scared of a few inbred cultists?
The audacity. I had enough.
What the fuck do you mean? They tried to kill me, feed me to you. And now you're bonded to me, and even yet, now they know I'm alive. On top of all of that, I'm afraid that they're after my family to lure me out. So you tell me, fuckhead.
Vedith laughed, a cruel laugh that filled me with equal amounts of anger and fear, and he leaned in, close, and purred.
You are afraid. I can feel it. You cannot fight, and you are nothing but a sad little lamb for the absolutely ravenous wolves to pluck and brutalize. And you can do nothing to stop it.
A shiver ran up my back, and I knew he was right. I couldn't fight. I barely knew how to use my strength effectively, and I have 0 gun skills. What can I do against cultists that may have been doing this for decades or more? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But Fletcher could. Maybe I can't, but Fletcher can. He seems capable, and he's the only other person to help me outside of Blackwood. Vedith's red eyes narrowed, and his grinning features morphed into an offended sneer. Good. I touched a nerve, so I pushed the attack.
You rely on me for survival. And like you said in Blackwood, you won out. So if you still want that, shut the fuck up and let me figure something out.
Vedith growls, his lips curling back to show off sharp teeth. But he knew that I was right, that he wouldn't hurt me. He leaned back and huffed in annoyance, silently conceding before he spoke.
Fine. But you can't escape me, since we share a body. Meat suit. Remember that.
I looked away to see the time, and when I looked back, my reflection was back to normal. I texted Fletcher that I was headed to bed and began to change, humming idly as I did so, allowing myself to simmer down after going on that verbal rampage against my resident brainworm. I walked around the house, ensuring that the doors were locked before turning out the lights and walking back to my bedroom, slipping into my bed and flicking the light on my side table out, before allowing my eyes to close after a decently productive day. Chapter 7. The shattering of glass rocked me from my sleep, the fog of sleep instantly lifting when my heart started to hammer against my ribs. I grabbed my phone when I heard the front door open, bouncing off the doorstep in the process, and with shaking hands, I shot off a text to Fletcher. Just 2 words, "They're here," before leaping out of bed to grab for my baton when the footsteps reached my door. Harnessing the strength unlocked through my panic and adrenaline, I hurled my cheap as shit chair I used as my computer chair at the first goon that kicked open my door, watching with amused glee as the cultist was slumped like a sack of potatoes after getting a face full of cheap chair. Shouts and curses were heard, and I moved to try and close the door, only for my arm to get grabbed and me yanked out of my room, thrown roughly to the ground, my baton skittering across the ground towards the kitchen. One goon grabbed my leg, only to get his breath forced from his lungs when my other foot rammed into his groin, and just like the first one, he crumpled, wheezing. Running on the vicious cocktail of adrenaline and fear still, I got to my feet and brought my fists up, winding my slug up like Popeye the Sailor, before throwing the meanest lunchbox hand that dazed the third goon, his eyeballs rattling in their sockets like a cartoon character. The fourth one drew a taser and leveled it, Taking aim and thinking quickly, I bolted left, right in front of the one I just dazed. The cultist fired the taser, the tines striking his buddy and sending shocks through his body. When the last goon went for a new cartridge, I kicked him in the gut, sending him sprawling on his back. I grabbed the baton from the ground and swung, cracking him in the head, knocking his lights out. When I saw the door, I grabbed my keys and bolted for the front door, and didn't see the armbar that caused stars to explode in my vision. And when I came to, I was being dragged towards a box van by another goon. They wore all black, with lower half masks around their mouths and noses. My hearing was still ringing, so I couldn't hear them conversing, until the tinnitus cleared up enough for me to make out what they were saying.
What do you mean the boss wants him alive? He knocked the fuck out of Tyler, Rhodes, and Sykes. And he still wants him in one piece?
The one that was dragging me groaned in what sounded like exasperation and dropped my leg onto the ground before turning to the one that just spoke, his voice giving away that he was a mix of tired and irritated.
You think I want to be out here? If your brother hadn't sent that fucking text to him, this would have been easier. But nope, he decided to be fucking petty.
They argued back and forth, and a third soon broke this up, hissing.
Both of you, shut the fuck up! There's 6 of us and 1 of them. Let's just get this over with.
The third man drew a pistol and cycled a bullet into the chamber by racking the slide before facing me.
The boss didn't say we couldn't maim him.
I began to panic, and when the grunt raised the pistol to shoot, I heard a faint snap, and the goon dropped like a bag of rocks, a bullet hole in his head. The others stiffened in surprise, just as a hail of suppressed gunfire began to come from the tree line to the right of us. I pushed myself sideways, doing a very botched roll to hide under the van those pricks were able to throw me into, while listening to panicked, suppressed shooting from the cultists to no avail, as my unseen saviors cut them down bit by bit, until the 6th and last goon tried to run down the dirt road to the main road, only to be sniped in the back. Silence finally settled, nothing moving in the night, until 4 dark shapes materialized from the shadow-filled woods, each one wearing all black combat gear. But the only thing that stood out to me was their headwear. The first to exit looked to be female, her headwear a raven's head, its inky black plumage blending in with the night. The head's deep blue eyes the only thing I could see. The next one, male, had what looked like a dragon's head, its matte black scales accented with gold and red, and its eyes were a deep golden color. The second female that came from the woods wore a ghillie suit, her rifle also shrouded in ghillie material that matched her suit, and her eyes were a deep maroon color, like blood. The last person, the leader, had a wolf's head, and like the others, its synthetic fur was black in color, with ice blue eyes in its sockets. The wolf looked around, then pressed his left index and middle finger to his ear, and spoke.
Talon 1 to Evil Eye. X-rays dealt with. No sign of Nexus. Stand by.
He then spoke to the other 3.
Talon, spread out. And remember, he's an ally, so please don't shoot him.
The trio murmured their affirmations before slinking away to search. I stayed under there for a bit longer, at least until I heard my name being called.
Matthew Traeger, make yourself known. We are not going to harm you.
Despite my screaming lizard brain, I crawled out from the van and raised my hands to show I wasn't a threat, 2 heartbeats away from pissing myself. The wolf-headed gunman walked up to me, allowing his carbine to hang by its sling before reaching for his own neck, undoing unseen straps, and pulled up. The head sliding off with a hiss as it separated from the body armor to reveal Fletcher fucking King, grinning a wolfish grin at my surprised expression.
Fletcher? How? What?
I sputter, unable to formulate a coherent sentence. Fletcher chuckled darkly before he silenced me with a finger to his lips. Shh, calm down. We will explain in a little bit. He keyed his earpiece again before he speaks into it. Talon 1 to Evil Eye. Nexus located. Proceeding to begin extracting him and any needed materials for long-term boarding. Estimated time until departure, 5 mics. Talon 1 out. He turned his head and called over his shoulder.
Talon, to me. We have our man.
The 3 others drifted back to us, so I got a better look at them all. The second male had what looked like a Colt XM177 Commando with a red dot optic on the top of the carry handle and a suppressor on the end of the barrel, lending to its Black Ops style. King had the same rifle as the male, though his rifle looked more stylized than the other one. The raven-headed one had what looked like a suppressed MP5K, her loadout looking more lightweight. The gillied one had a bolt-action rifle, most likely an M24 outfitted with a monolithic suppressor and an EOTech 10x23 sniper's optic. King smiles and motions to them, stopping on the dragon first. This is Jason, my second. He's a wonderful driver and a cook, as well as a marksman. He moved on to the gillied one next. This is Adler, our resident sniper. She can take your head off from over a half a kilometer away if she so wishes. Adler nods once at me, and I nervously nod back. Lastly was the Raven. And this is Allison. She's our medical expert. You'll soon meet Evil Eye when we get you to safety. This rocks me from my stupor, and I look at Fletcher. What? Fletcher sighs and sets a hand on my shoulder, his glove tipped with claws. Get your things. You're not safe here. Don't worry. Once you're safe, Adler and Allison are going back to check on your folks in Boston. This gave me some pause, but I relaxed, knowing that my mom and dad will be well looked after. Jason cuts in, the jaws on his dragon head moving in time with his words.
Fletcher, we need to get moving. No doubt they may have had backup in case things went sideways. I estimate about 3 mics till we have company.
Fletcher nodded, looking at me. Get your shit. A bag of clothes, toiletries, and the like. Jason and Allison will get your computer. Adler, Overwatch. Move, everyone. While I went about grabbing several changes of clothing to stuff into my backpack, I scooped up my fallen baton from the ground. That was when I spotted one of the goons' pistols that had been knocked free of its holster, laying halfway under my couch. Thinking for the long term, I swiped it and tossed it into my bag before Fletcher came back in. You ready? Jason and Allison have your other stuff loaded. Once we head out, it may be a bit before you can return. I held up a finger in an I got it moment and grabbed my car keys. No one was going to touch my baby, not on my watch. When we exited my house, I was surprised to see that we were taking the van those goons were about to toss me into as our ticket out. Fletcher pats my shoulder, slipping his other head back on and assuring that the seals were tightened before he spoke next, the jaws on the wolf head moving with his words.
Easier to move without drawing attention. Thankfully, we didn't shoot up the van, so no bullet holes will get us pulled over. So climb on in the back. Jason will drive, with Allison in the passenger seat. You, me, and Adler will be in the back.
Fletcher opens the back doors and I climb in first, sitting down on a seat. Adler climbed up next, sitting across from me, and Fletcher entered last, sitting right next to the doors after closing them. He pounded on the roof and barked.
Let's get moving. Gotta get back to the rig.
The van jolted to life, and we were off into the unknown. It was around an hour or two when we pulled into an old lot that had abandoned containers and other trash and junkers resting in it, our van coming to a stop before what looked like an abandoned terabyte. As we got out of the van, Fletcher spoke a word in what I can assume as Latin, and a side panel on the trailer of the terabyte opened with a ladder. From within it, a slim, red-handed female poked her head out, wearing round glasses that aided her strikingly amethyst-purple eyes. When she spoke, her voice was a mix of sing-song and soft-spoken. There you guys are. I was hoping you got lost. Fletcher chuckled and waved as we approached, calling out.
Want to give us a hand, Ash? Our guest here has a PC he needs set up in the guest compartment.
The woman nodded and leapt down and sauntered over to the back of the van, grabbing the hard case that had my tower in it, being aided by Raven, who carried my screen. They entered the terabytes and disappeared, Fletcher motioning me to climb in. I take the rungs and climb up, pulling myself up into the beast. If I were to describe this behemoth, it would be like this. Imagine a war rig from Mad Max, but full of military hardware, anywhere from satellite terminals, drone stations, a miniature armory, rooms for sleep, and more that I haven't seen yet. Fletcher set a hand on my shoulder and chuckled softly at my wide-eyed wonder.
Welcome to the terabyte. Come, I'll show you your room while we head back to our den.
He led me down the trailer to the small rooms, and when he opened it, I was surprised at how minimal it was. My PC was in one corner, all set up, and actually nicer than I could imagine. My bed was on the other side of the room, plain white sheets and all, with a nice side table where my chargers were. I set my hiking bag down on the bed and unpacked, gingerly setting the borrowed pistol on the side table, while I pulled my clothes out and stuffed them into the dresser off to the left. Feeling the terabyte under me start to move, Fletcher poked his head in, free of his combat gear and wolf head helmet hybrid. "We're moving, so it's gonna get kind of bumpy." He paused when he spotted the pistol on the side table. I followed his gaze and gulped a bit, giving him a sheepish look. "Yeah, I figured I'd take it. You'll never know when you may need it, right?" Fletcher chuckled and entered, picking it up and turning it over in his hand before he ejected the magazine and racked the slide, which ejected the bullet within onto the bedsheets. He collected it and sat down in the chair at my desk, holding up the pistol, the side lock back to indicate it was empty, before he spoke. "This is a Glock 19, and judging by what's attached to it, it seems they're decently funded. An X400 flashlight and laser combo, and Trigicon RMR red dot on the rear of the slide. An impressively simple spread of attachments, I must say." He finishes by slipping the loose bullet back into the breech, snapping the slide closed with the slide release, and slipping the magazine back into it before he flicks the safety on and sets it back down. He looks at me again and asks the obvious. "You're not much of a gun guy, are you?" I shake my head sheepishly, but reassure him with a true fact. "I've shot guns in the past, but I'm not super versed in them like you seem to be." Fletcher nodded, and after making sure I at least knew the basic rules of gun safety, he allowed me to keep it, instructing me to keep it close, and only use it when absolutely necessary. He left shortly after, promising we could stop someplace to eat, and leaving me alone with my thoughts. I turned the Glock over in my hands, its foreign weight reassuring to me, until I heard that voice again, snapping me back to reality that I shared a brain with this thing.
Well. What do we have here? Nothing. That's quite the toy for you to have. Are you sure you're ready to use it if needed? We both know you don't have the stomach for it.
I shook my head and stuffed it into my bag before setting said bag on the right side of my bed. After all that, I lay on my back on said bed, staring up at the soft lights that glow above me, before looking over and pressing the button on the right of my lamp, which turned the soft lights out. In blessed darkness, my eyes drooped, sleep finally coming for me after everything that just happened within a span of just a few hours, allowing myself to finally fall asleep. Interludium. New login detected. Please input the access key to continue. The keys that tapped loudly in the deafening silence inputs a simple 5-letter code. Talos. And new text appears in place of the old. Input accepted. Welcome, Dr. Amara. The unseen doctor typed several reports, mainly inconsequential to anyone that would be watching, until an email popped up in his inbox. He sends off the last report before he opens it, his blood chilling while he reads the header. Project Inversion has been approved. Please refer to the email attached for more information. Mars Aeternum, Dr. Christopher Rockwell. Dr. Amara signed and opened the email, beginning at the first line after Dr. Rockwell's. Greetings and congratulations. Dread formed in his gut as he did so. Operation Invasion's approval by Director Ives is monumental to our gaze, and it is within Talos that we strive for the betterment of our world and humanity as a whole. To those that got this email, you will report to Site 19 in Massachusetts, coordinates embedded. Upon your arrival, you will be assigned your floors. Be advised, Biolab personnel will be required to provide DNA samples of themselves in case of unfortunate death by the subjects or personal negligence. So said sample will be used in the upcoming synth program. I hope to see all of you there, and I value your skills and dedication to our cause within Talos. Mars Aeternum, Dr. Christopher Rockwell, Head Scientist. Dr. Amara sighed heavily and closed the email before shutting off his terminal. The next few months to a year would be very, very interesting. He stood up, gathering his physical folders and his satchel before leaving his office, ensuring it was locked before he walked down the hall, passing by a large mural of the Talos logo on the back wall, that being a science beaker flanked by wings, signifying that it was a science and research-based wing of the parent company, Rampage. Amara sighed as he walked out of the main building, being escorted by an armed guard that looked out of a cyberpunk game. The faceless soldiers' gear a mix of high-tech and tactical. Their rifle outfitted a heartbeat monitor, thermal hybrid optic, and a black L3 Harris PEC-15 laser device. Amara inwardly cringed at the unsettling nature of his escorts, knowing full well that Rampage is responsible for this tight security. Soon he arrived at his bungalow, the soldier muttering a curt, "Good evening," before the doctor went inside to finally relax after an uneventful day, until he remembered the email, and that cold lump of dread settled back in his gut. Amara changed into more comfortable attire before tossing Stouffer's lasagna into his oven, humming the theme of The Last of Us as he did so. While his dinner was baking in the oven, he turned on his personal terminal and opened an encrypted connection, waiting for his contacts to connect from their other end. After around 10 minutes, the alert sounded of the connection's success, and Amara sent out the first message. "Is it ready?" His contact responded quickly, which eased the nervous doctor somewhat. "Yes, everything's ready. Just say the word and I'll start the broadcast. If someone is really listening, the message will get out." Amara exhales long and slow, his sky blue eyes darting to the secured connection text before back to the chat box. His fingers hovered over the keys when the contact responded again. "Well?" Swallowing down his apprehension, Amara typed back, "Do it. Let's see if someone's listening." The contact went offline, and Amara closed his eyes. If he was caught, this would mean his death for sure. After he ate half of the tray of lasagna, he showered, changed, and crawled into his bed before curling up to sleep. Somewhere in the Appalachian Mountains, far away from where the clandestine conversation took place, a well-concealed antenna from a long-forgotten broadcast station lit up, and its message began to play, beckoning any who listened to solve its mystery. Chapter 8. The faint sound of the rig's air brakes woke me up from my slumber, stretching my limbs out as I sat up and rubbed my eyes. That was perhaps the best sleep I've gotten since this shit show began, and I wasn't going to take it for granted. I cast my eyes over to my desk, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, a rendition of Belle's theme playing in my head as I gingerly picked up the tape, which read, "Play Me" on the front. I stuffed it in my pocket and exited my room, trying to swallow down my apprehension and fear as I approached Fletcher. "Hey, did you come into my room at some point when I was asleep?" Fletcher looked genuinely puzzled, and when he inquired as to why I asked, I produced the tape, explaining that it was on my desk. He seemed mildly concerned, as he should be. Someone had to have gotten into the rig while I was moving to do this. He called Jason and Adler to sweep the rig's trailer to ensure it was clear, and they went over to the lockers on the far wall, withdrawing 2 Calico M960A submachine guns and swiftly leaving to carry out their task. Fletcher took the tape and went over to one of the terminals closest to the other end of the trailer before popping it in and hitting play. When the tape began to play, it showed the inside of Blackwood Penitentiary, more specifically, the cell I was housed in. It was shortly after the guard gave me the pill bottle when I heard my own voice.
"I can taste the rust in your tap water."
The memory crashed back to me as I watched myself, meditating, when I saw a dark shape materialize at the end of my bed. My panicked voice came over the camera feed.
Guard, he's in my cell."
The dark shape didn't make any sound, but a few seconds later, Fletcher winced when I was forced to sit down on the tape. And it was about 30 minutes later did I hear myself speak on the tape.
"This'll get me out of this prison, right?"
And a short time later, a vile voice I knew too well spoke through the tape.
"Let's delve into the dark together."
And the tape terminates in static, signaling Fletcher to eject the tape and look at me. Want to tell me who that was? That caused my heart to skip a beat. Did he see him? Or hear him? That, I think, is the thing in my head. I must sound crazy. I cast my eyes down, feeling ashamed, but Fletcher sighed softly. "I didn't see anything, but that voice doesn't sound natural. Your answer explains it just fine." I felt relieved, even more so when Jason and Adler returned from their sweep. No one's here, King. What's got you so spooked? Adler's question was more curious than prodding, and Fletcher responded in a level voice while holding up the Play Me tape. Matt found this on his desk when he woke up, and swears I wasn't there when he unpacked his things last night. Jason shifted a bit in slight discomfort before he spoke next. And the only way for that to be there, Fletcher didn't need to finish the statement. Everyone knew the answer. Someone, or something, had gotten inside while the rig was moving to leave that tape there. Fletcher opened the trailer's side door and extended the ladder for us to exit into the fresh air, allowing us to relax in the cloudy morning while Fletcher pulled Ashton and Allison aside to tell them what occurred in hushed voices. I cast my gaze to the sky, closing my eyes and allowing the cool air to caress my face, easing my anxiety just enough to think a tad bit clearer than I was 10 minutes ago. Fletcher called for a gathering, and I drifted back toward him as the rest of the gang met him there. When he held all of our attention, he began. All right, everyone, ears up. Seems we're being watched by someone or something, and they may know what we're up to. On that note, we're gonna have to split up early. Allison, Jason, go to the rear trailer and take the Jeep to Boston to check on Matt's family. The rest of us will continue to our den to set up and plan our next moves. Try and figure out who has it out for our storyteller here. Keep your guns holstered, hearts and minds. He kept talking, but my mind tuned him out. A million thoughts flying through my brain at mock Jesus. They only ceased when I spoke up. I want to go with Jason and Allison. Fletcher paused and looked over at me, a familiar twinkle in his eye before I saw a half smile flitter across his face. He nodded in approval and continued where he left off, and I felt myself relax. Jason smirked at me, and Allison didn't emote outwardly. After Fletcher finished the brief, he walked over to me, a knowing smile on his face. Go and get some of your things, that Glock included. I'll grab a few other items for you while you do that. I nodded and hurried back into the rig, throwing open the door to my room and grabbing my cold steel walking stick, the bear mace, and the pistol from inside the nightstand drawer before Fletcher entered my room and handed me a gun belt with an empty holster, and to my surprise, a nice-looking stiletto knife, which looked like something out of The Witcher. I took the belt and put it on, admiring how it felt, and when I slid the pistol into the holster, it stayed in place thanks to the magnetic latches. After Fletcher showed me how to operate the holster by pinching a button on the outer shell of the polymer holster and pulling the pistol from the holster and back in again, he led me to where Jason and Allison were at with the Jeep. He stopped me and looked me dead in the face, his voice dropping to a murmur. Be ready for anything. You may have to fight, and you may not. Keep a clear head and stick with the other two, okay? I nodded wordlessly, feeling my heart beat a bit faster. He pats my shoulder, and I get into the back seat of the Jeep, laying my walking stick across my lap while Jason got into the front seat and Allison got into the passenger seat. And with that, we went our separate ways, the rig continuing on to their den and us towards Boston. I allowed my eyes to close, at first to relax, only to awaken in a hellscape beyond anyone's comprehension. My head whipped around left and right, seeing rolling gray dunes of ruins who I could only assume were sand or ashes. High above, winged raptor-like creatures circled, their hollow screeches echoing across the wastes. I pat my hips, my panic rising even more to discover that my pistol, staff, and knife were absent, as was my mace and stick. The ground shuddered under me, and thinking quickly, I dove into the remnants of what was once a clock tower, cowering like a mouse hiding from a fox, as one of the great winged beasts landed on the ground, its snake-like head slowly sweeping across the dunes in search of prey. Its orange reptilian eyes blinked slowly as its head turned in my direction. I could see great, scarring wounds along its mouth and muzzle, and I was just wondering what could have caused them before I saw the beast dip down and submerge his head in a black-watered river that I didn't notice until that moment, taking massive drafts from the basin before raising up again. Its muzzle and jaw were bloodied and eaten away by the river itself, like the Styx would in Greek mythology, showing off exposed muscles, tendons, and its monstrous fangs. It was almost captivating, even if it was horrifying to look at, and I didn't even realize I was leaving my safety until I felt the wind on my face,
but before it could see or smell me, I saw another human burst from cover and try to make a run for it. The human looked older, based on his sallow, pale skin and gray hair, and his feeble flight caught the demon's attention. The fell beast hissed and loped after the fleeing man, taking 2 monstrous steps before its jaws snapped closed on the man's left leg. The man screamed and thrashed as the beast lifted him up. The sounds of bones crunching and being turned into dust audible as the jaws tightened more on the trapped limb. The leg was fully severed, and the man fell only a few feet before he was impaled through the belly on one of the beast's talons, his screams then terminating into horrific gurgles as the monster lifted his dying body to its reptiloid face. A black, forked tongue slithered out to taste the air. The man swung his one arm in futile hope to deter the beast, but it chortled in grim amusement before opening its jaw wide, its black, void-like gullet in full view as it flicked the talon, tossing the dying man in before its jaws snapped closed. The horrific chewing assaulting my ears, even as I clamped my hands over my ears to try and drown out the assault. That was when I spotted another building. A massive tower that seemed to dip down into the earth, a few good feet away. If I ran, that thing would chase me and maybe eat me. But if I stayed, it would eventually find me. Making my choice, I grabbed and tossed a loose brick in the opposite direction to temporarily confuse the beast. Then it took off running towards the tower, hearing the angered roar of the dragon-like monster as it realized my deception, beginning its chase. Closer and closer I got to the tower, forcing myself to run harder, and I could feel and smell the rotting breath of my pursuer. The oppressive, disgusting scent of rotten flesh and decay, almost paralyzing. And at the last possible moment, I leapt into the tower, feeling the air behind me snap closed as I hurtled down, down, down under the ground, until I landed in what I hoped to God was water, plunging into cold darkness. I frantically swam up, breaking to the surface of the cold water, pulling myself further up onto the smooth, rocky ground to recover my breath. I spat out the water from my mouth, not caring if it tasted clean or not, and I felt around on the wall until I found a hallway of sorts, which I followed until I ran into an expanse of what looked like punching bags, until I touched one. It was a body. Dozens and dozens of hanging bodies that were suspended from the ceiling by oily black tendrils that disappeared into the darkness above. It looked like something out of Slanesh's darkest dream, vile and depraved. I could feel my bile rising from my stomach, but I forced it down again, not wishing to retch. I forced myself to push through the hanging bodies, their cold, almost damp flesh rubbing against me as I pushed through bit by bit. The constant drip of distant water didn't help the subterranean fear I felt as I pushed through the pale obstructions towards the other side. And I froze when I heard one of the faceless bodies whisper in my ear,
"Do you fear death?"
My heart seized and I began to quicken my pace. The whispers turned into babbling screams and wails the more I pushed past them. Sallow, skinned hands groped and grasped for me as I went, wailing and gibbering like mad men in the throes of a violent outburst. Tears ran down my face as their fingers pulled on my shirt, hair, and even my face and legs. I felt they'd pull me down and rip me apart like a horde of undead, their cold, blackened teeth ripping me open. And I finally pushed past the bodies and landed on my side, scrambling back as the cave was now silent again. And when I faced the bodies, I saw them begin to shrivel and mummify right before my very eyes, before they crumbled into the same dust, no, sand, that was in the dunes outside of this hellhole. This realm must be made of millions of dead, all reduced to this sand-like substance, a truly horrific way to die, to be consumed by an unseen monster in the dark. I got back up, my hands shaking like an addict going through withdrawals as I continued down the hall, the expanse of which was intermittently lit by glowing blue mushrooms, which looked strangely edible. After squashing my curiosity, even after my stomach grumbled at me, I kept moving until I was spat out, back outside, on a lower elevation than where I was last. Above, I could no longer hear that damnable monster anymore, which was short-lived when I felt the ground quake again. But before I could look up, oily black tendrils shot up from the ashen dunes under me and wrapped around my legs, beginning to pull me under the ground. I thrashed and screamed, begging to be spared, when that slithering, vile voice I've been suppressing for so long growled at me with sadistic glee.
Oh, Matthew, you can't escape me. We want the same thing, and one way or another, I will have mine. We're stuck with one another, and I will enjoy every minute of our bond. So be good meat suit and delve into the dark with me.
That last part of Vidith's vile monologue was punctuated by tendrils slithering into my mouth, my ears, my nose, and even under my eyes, before I was jolted awake by a hand shaking my leg to awaken me from the hell I had found myself in, back to the real world. Chapter 9. We're just entering Boston. You're gonna have to give us directions. Allison's voice was soft but welcome as I shook the remnants of sleep from myself, groggily nodding my head in response. The time was now 3:03 p.m., so I seemed to have been asleep for around 3 or 4 hours at most. I pointed out each cross street we needed to take, and the closer we got, the more nervous I felt. Why did I feel this way? Did something happen? Surely not, right? I told Jason to speed up a bit, and when he asked why, I told him that I have a bad feeling about this. He obliged, speeding up only slightly so we're not pulled over by the police. The feeling worsened when we pulled onto the street my parents lived on, and when I pointed out the house, we rolled to a stop across the street from it. I got out, making my way across the street into my parents' house, feeling slight relief when I heard Jericho barking from inside. I knocked on the door, only for it to creak open, my blood chilling. I waved for Jason and Allison, frantic, and they came to me, hiding their calicos in their coats. Jason stepped in front and nudged the door open more with his calico, creeping inside, with Allison following. I went in last, immediately smelling the one thing I didn't want to smell. Blood. The sickly iron stench curdled my stomach as I stuck close to Jason and Allison, until I saw legs in a doorway. I lurched forward, even as Jason warned me not to, and I fell to my knees beside my dad. His double-barreled shotgun lay empty beside him. He was riddled with bullet holes. The killing shot was one in his temple. When I looked around, I saw 2 other bodies nearby, dressed in all black, their chests ruined by the shells Dad had pumped into them. I followed the set of bloody footprints up the hall, stepping over a 3rd dead body in the process, a steak knife lodged in his eye, and into the bathroom, where a choking sob came out of my throat. Mom lay in the tub, riddled with bullets, like Dad was. Tears freely ran down my face as my mouth worked to say something, anything, to no avail. I felt a hand gently pull me away from the scenes, Jason's voice gently murmuring to not look, and it's gonna be okay. But will it be okay? They're dead. Both of them. Fucking dead. I buried my head into his chest and screamed into it, anger and sorrow billowing out like fire from a dragon's maw. Jason held me, trying his best to comfort me to no avail. When we exited, Allison murmured something about having gotten the hard drives from my parents' camera systems. I pushed away from Jason and marched back in, picking up my dad's shotgun. After careful consideration, I laid blankets over both of them and exited the house, muttering in a somber, monotone voice.
We need to go.
The two looked at one another, but followed, and we left quickly. Neither one of us had mentioned it, but the blood was fresh. The massacre must have happened before we got there, probably in the last 30 minutes or so. Under my flat, straight-faced demeanor, I felt absolute anger fill my senses. The red-hot flow in my veins making me feel like my blood was made of magma. If my eyes could change color, they'd be red, as cliché as it sounds. I didn't pay attention to the sound of Allison talking to Fletcher on the phone, telling him what we had found. I felt a wet nose nudge my hand, and I looked over to see Jericho laying on his stomach, looking up at me with sad, pitiful eyes. I rubbed his head absently, quiet as the grave, as we drove out of the city, seeing police roar past us towards the house. I closed my eyes and exhaled, long and slow. We drove in silence for the few hours it took for us to arrive on the outskirts of Pittsfield, Massachusetts, within the state park of said town. As we rolled up to the massive Firewatch Tower, the surrounding buildings lit up as well. This must be the den that Fletcher was talking about. Everything aside, it's a nice place, cozy and secure, based on the perimeter fence and sensors we saw on our way in. I counted 4 cabins. A main building that was made out of a pair of converted shipping containers, the main tower that seemed to be rigged up for communications, and the generator building behind the tower that powered the grounds. Fletcher, Ashton, and Adler were waiting for us at the main building. We disembarked, Fletcher coming over to me, and when I tried to push past, he grabbed my arm gently and murmured, "Morn, it's you right. We will find who did this, I swear." He released me and directed me to the cabin that I would be using, and I went there, Jericho padding along behind me. I closed and bolted the door, curling up on my bed in my clothes still, silently weeping in the growing darkness. All I had left of my old life was Jericho. And whatever this new life I found myself in now would only test my resolve. "Hey, dude, come on. Ash was able to restore the footage, and I think you should see this." Fletcher's voice was soft, knowing how tentative the subject was. It had been a week since me, Jason, and Allison stumbled across my parents' home in a state of, well, never mind. I sat up from the bed, my hair a rat's nest due to me refusing to leave my room after we returned that day. After quickly brushing my hair back, I exit my cabin and go to the center building, where I saw Ashton White sitting at an array of CCTV screens, one of which was paused on the outside of my parents' home. Ashton looked back at us, then to me specifically, and her eyes softened. "If you're not up for this, we can..." I cut her off with a curt, "Just fucking play it." And she turned around, tapping play on the console to start the feed. The first few hours she skipped through until about 2 p.m., where she saw a black sedan pull up out front. 4 figures total got out of said sedans, armed with suppressed pistols by the looks of it, as they approached the door. The leader, wearing a demon mask, took the lead and knocked on the door. And when I heard the door open, I heard my dad speak.
What in the hell? What is this, a skit?
The lead man, in a blatantly stupid move in my opinion, removed his mask to speak to him. His face was quite handsome, even through the grainy footage, and he had a neatly trimmed beard, pointed like a stereotypical demon. And when he spoke, his voice was smooth.
"Are you Michael Tragar? We have some questions for you regarding your son, Matthew."
Dad grunted, then spoke again.
"What's he done? Matthew's many things, but a troublemaker he isn't. Most times."
The sharp-faced man smiles, though it looks forced. When he spoke again, his voice was strained, almost annoyed.
"What he's done is, he ruined the holy service, and he must pay his penance."
Dad said nothing, before presumably stepping aside to let them in, to which they entered together. Several uncomfortable minutes passed before the thundering sound of 2 shotgun blasts sounded out, the only 2 we heard. Another 3 minutes passed, and the sharp-faced man walked out, pistol in hand. He paused, looking at the camera, snarling silently, and he was gone, taking off in the aforementioned black sedan. Shortly, around 30 total minutes after 2 p.m., our Jeep came into frame, and the rest was history. Ashton stopped the recording and sighed shakily, looking to Fletcher. "They may be on to us." I listened to Fletcher and Ashton talk, going over possible plans when I spoke up. "I have an idea." Fletcher and Ashton looked at me, and I continued. "They're after me, right? How about you guys, track me? Slip a small tracker into my sock or some shit, so that way you guys can find me." Ashton looked unsure, but Fletcher held up a finger and walked out, returning with an earpiece no bigger than a Raycon. He handed it to me as he spoke. "This has a small GPS tracker in it. Ashton can use the tower's antennas to keep track of you. Naturally, me and the others won't be too far behind to kick things off and get you out of trouble." I shook my head and spoke as firmly as I could, despite the anger that edged in my voice, much to Vidith's glee. "This bastard is mine, understand? I'll make him fucking pay for what he's done to me." Fletcher's face wore a worried look on it now, as he took a step forward, but stopped. He and I both knew he wasn't going to be able to talk me out of this, so he sighed and bowed his head. "Fine. He's yours." That was all I needed to hear, and while the others got packed up, I laid out my dad's shotgun before taking a hacksaw and sawing off both the barrel and stock to make it concealable within my jacket. Before any of you purists bitch at me, yes, I know it's a felony, and no, I do not give a fuck. After I made sure that each end was smooth and won't cut me if I moved wrong, I tucked the shotgun, which had 2 shells in it, into the inside of my coat, making sure it's snug before I grabbed the Glock, shoving it into my holster before grabbing my walking stick last, leaving the room. Ashton would watch Jericho, so I don't worry too much about him. I met Fletcher and the other 3 where they were at by the Jeep, and Fletcher handed me a wad of cash, murmuring that it was for the Greyhound out of Pittsfield, and it made sense. If they were watching us, it would make sense to see only me arrive via bus, then in a Jeep with 4 heavily armed people. I quietly thanked him, but he asked a question I didn't consider until now. "Where will you go first? Back to your place?" I thought about it for a few seconds before I gave him my response. "Mom, Dad, and I knew someone in Point Pleasant when I was younger. His name is Solomon. He's a minister at the local church. I may stop there for some advice." I saw the look on his face and assured him that I wasn't going to go blabbing about what happened and who I was hunting. He seems to accept this and pats my shoulder, assuring me that we would find him. I gave a tired smile, and before I knew it, I was on the next Greyhound, bound for home. Sleep tokens take me back to Eden blasting through my headphones, staring out at the passing landscape as memories played in my head. Bitter memories that seem to stroke the fire of my growing anger, though I keep it controlled for the most part. When the song ended, I removed my headphones to allow my ears to rest, when a slithering voice hisses from in front of me.
About time. I was hoping you'd finally want to listen.
I looked up and stiffened. There, sitting across from me, was Vidith, having taken on my own form with a sickening smile. I looked around, seeing that no one else could see him, before I growled my response back, keeping my tone low. "What the fuck do you want now? Can't you see I'm in no mood to play your stupid fucking games today?" Vidith chuckled, a laugh that didn't help my frustration and anger, and after he saw how annoyed I looked, he began to talk.
You've been doing well this last year, and the fire you house in your body is exactly what I need. And the little shot you took in your dream
My jaw gaped, and he grinned, his mouth full of sharp teeth, and continued.
When you sleep, so does your conscious mind. However, your unconscious mind does not, and it roams freely, poking and prodding at memories, fears, and likes. That's what gives you your dreams and your nightmares. And your latest nightmare, well, that was due to your unconscious mind prodding at me. And well, how could I not indulge myself?
My anger flared. This bastard. Why? Was all I could ask. Vidith huffed and responded pointedly.
Wouldn't you feel annoyed if someone was poking into your thoughts uninvited?
He did have a point, and I didn't retort. He chuckled again, leaning back before his red eyes with unnaturally V-shaped pupils locked onto mine. The next words he spoke were chilling to the bone.
There were 21 others before you. All but one died in some horrifically messy way. One shot himself. Another was nothing more than a puddle of gore. And others, well, let's just say their corpses were put to better use.
My mind flashed back to the hanging bodies in that cursed cave, and I shivered, but it registered for me. He said all but one, so I took a chance. So, someone succeeded in escaping you. Vidith's smug smile faltered, and I saw him realize he fucked up. The demon growls angrily.
I simply grew bored of him. He was no fun, and unlike you, he made it his mission to displease me. You, however, are leagues better than he is, and are 4 times as entertaining in your fear and so-called determination.
But I could tell he was frazzled, and I chuckled, blatantly defying his threatening demeanor. I haven't felt this ballsy before, and it made me feel good. I smirked at him and fit my headphones back on and closed my eyes. This time, Dance Macabre by Ghost began to play, and I allowed myself to sleep, tapping my foot to the beat. A ghost of a smile graced my lips as the many bloody fantasies flooded my head, relishing in the day I got my recompense. Chapter 10. I stepped back into my home and looked around, seeing that the door had been repaired from when it was kicked in all those moons ago. I roamed around the house, admiring how well kept it seems to be, even after all this time, and I was even delighted to find that my car was still there. I patted my pocket, feeling the keys to said car still in there, and I felt the dawning urge to take my El Camino for a spin. After checking in with Fletcher, letting him know that I made it okay, I walked out and closed the door, ensuring that it was locked up tight, before I unlocked my car with a press of the Forbes button. I slid into the driver's seat and caressed the wheel before slipping the key into the ignition, and I turned the key, grinning like the Cheshire Cat as the engine roared to life. I backed it out from under the carport and drove down the gravel road and turned onto the main road, cruising through town, following my own beat, until I ended up parking in front of the church I last remembered Solomon being at. I got out of the car and locked it, walking up to the great wooden doors and knocking on it twice, before stepping back and waiting for a response. After about 2 minutes of waiting, the doors cracked open, and a black-haired man poked his head out. Hello, can I help you? I smiled at him and introduced myself, explaining that me and my family once went here before my parents moved to Boston. The man's face lit up, and he invited me in before scurrying off to fetch Solomon. I walked towards the pulpit, fingers brushing idly across the wooden backs of the pews that were lined up before it.
Edith droned faintly in my head, an oddly soothing feeling, when I heard a weathered yet level voice call to me from the back.
Matthew, it's been too long, my boy.
I turned around and smiled, only to be surprised by how young Solomon looked. Last I saw the old man, he was exactly that. An old man in his late 60s, early 70s. Now he looked like he just peaked at 40. He approached me, and we shook hands, and it was a warm, fatherly handshake. Solomon took me to his study, where he offered me some water to drink, which I accepted gratefully. We caught up for a bit, sharing laughs and memories, until the gut punch came.
So, my boy, how are your parents?
They doing well? My heart tightened, and I looked down, quiet, before I responded to his question with as measured a voice as I could. They passed recently. Solomon's smile dropped almost instantly, and he began to apologize, to which I waved a hand and said dismissively, I gave their CCTV footage to the police. They'll find who did it. Solomon looked over to me with a look that I could only assume was sympathy, and offered to get me something else to drink. I accepted, and he stepped out to go get it, leaving me to my own devices. I stood up and wandered around the office, looking over the relics and books, when I accidentally nudged one of the empty torch sconces next to the bookcase, allowing a hidden compartment to pop open. I opened it further and peered inside, my eyes growing as wide as saucers when they fell upon the items inside. A golden demon mask, as well as the book. I tore my gaze away, only to see stars explode in my field of vision as a fist crashed into my jaw, sending me sprawling on my back. The black-haired male from before looked down at me with clear disdain, his upper lip crinkled in a snarl. I tried to get to my feet, only for another explosion of pain to blossom in my gut as the man kicked me in the stomach, forcing the air from my lungs. As I lay on my side, gasping for breath, I saw a pair of boots enter my view, and I lifted my gaze. My blood ran cold. It was him, the one who murdered my parents. His sky-blue eyes seemed to glimmer with cruel glee as he squats next to me, lifting my head by my ponytail while he looked over my reddening face like an appraiser would a gemstone or antique. Then, with zero pomp or ceremony, he slammed my head into the wooden floor, and the whole world collapsed into blackness. I floated in the abyss of the immaterial, feeling like I was submerged in slime or something similar, as my movements were sluggish and almost lethargic. I turned my head in every direction, seeing nothing but oppressive darkness as far as my eyes could perceive, which did not help my growing anxiety one bit. I began to try and swim. Yes, I said swim. In any direction, feeling myself move ever so slightly, but it wasn't until I started to swim up did I feel a change. I went faster, going up and down, than I did going left, right, or any variation thereof. It took what felt like an eternity, but I eventually broke the surface of what I saw was a rolling mass of black goop, of which bones and remnants floated inside of. Panic seized my chest, and I scrabbled for the rocky edge of the death pit, pulling myself up and out of the gelatinous black mass and onto the cold rocks. I stared down at it with a mix of revulsion and wonder, wondering what else resided in this nightmare realm. After allowing my eyes to adjust to the darkness, I saw a path that I hoped would lead above ground, so I moved towards it. The only sounds I could hear were my footsteps on the cold stones. My hands caressed the smooth wall, admiring the flawless surface, using it as a guide as I ascended from the depths of the earth.
soon emerging in the ashen hell realm I had been in before, when I was being chased by the fell beast-like creature. Thankfully, the aerial demons were nowhere to be found this time, so I was able to explore more freely, wandering over to each ruin to examine them more closely, ignoring the faded blood splatters that stained the stones. There was a clock tower, a temple, a church, and many more buildings from bygone eras. This was equal parts thrilling and unnerving. Just where in the fuck was I? And how do I keep ending up here? I kept asking this question every now and again when I came across skeletons of not just humans, but other creatures, from humanoid wolves to actual dragons, showing how widespread this place can be. But how? These things didn't exist, right? I couldn't wrap my head around it, and I continued to trudge up the ashen dunes, hoping against hope to find somewhere, anywhere, to shelter. But instead, I saw something in the distance. A portal frame. The same portal from that fateful night. And I began to speed walk towards it, my heart beating faster and faster, not out of fear, but out of excitement. I reached the frame, hands running along its smooth surface, fingernails scratching at the dark runes that were gouged in the stone itself, trying to find some kind of activation switch or phrase, like the elven doorway to Moria in Lord of the Rings, to no avail. I cursed out loud and punched the frame out of pure frustration, shaking my hand after registering the pain I now felt in my knuckles, when I heard a smug voice hiss at me from behind.
Oh, that looks like it hurt. You want me to kiss it to make it feel better, Matthew?
I whirled around, coming face to face with him, a rolling mass of black tendrils, two burning red eyes that conveyed pure, cruel glee. His face, oh God, his face, was in the shape of a blood-red V. I couldn't see his mouth, but I could assume it was parted in a grin, and part of me thanked whatever god that existed that I can't see it. My heart seized as Vidith towered high above me, a Lovecraftian-esque deity of horrifically epic proportions. Vidith lifted two gnarled hands, each finger on said hands, to which there were four of, terminated in curled claws that could easily eviscerate anyone and anything with frightful ease. Tears ran down my cheek, meeting eye to eye with the monster that shared my mind. Vidith chuckled, shaking the ground under me, and he spoke again, the unfiltered roar hammering my eardrums when his words reached me.
Behold your God, Matthew. Bask in my forbidden visage, lest you go mad, like so many others before you.
He was a god. That much was true. His voice was low, guttural, but melodic, almost hypnotizing, with a few screams mixed in every now and again. His visage was so captivating, I didn't realize that there were humanoid things emerging from the dunes, all ashen and humanoid, with various growths all over their bodies. But one common malformation stood out overall: the blood-red V's that were on their bodies in different locations, from their faces, chests, backs, etc. It was when one grabbed me that snapped me out of my stupor, lashing out with a panicked kick, which caved the puppet's chest like it was made of wet toilet paper. I swung and kicked, but no matter how many I fell, more took their place, grabbing and gasping, their ashen, sallow skin cold to the touch as they groped and pulled at my limbs and clothes. All the while, Vidith laughed. The puppet spoke. pulled me down, their nails clawing and ripping, and I screamed and screamed until my world finally darkened. But not before Vidith whispered into my ear.
Our story has just begun, Matthew. And you will tell it.
My eyes cracked open, wincing as the candlelight assaulted my sore eyes. I went to rub them, only to find my arms chained behind my back. My eyes snapped open fully, finding myself in a cell, cobblestone walls all around me, and a wrought iron door in front of me. I was in a fucking gulag cell. I pulled on the chains and yelled, cursing the spineless fucks that I knew were listening to me. Eventually, I hung my head, panting from the exertion, beads of crimson running down my torn wrist from the shackles. Vidith chuckled darkly, but said nothing, tears running down my cheeks. I was back at this wretched fucking place. I hope Fletcher and his people can still track me. The door unbolted and opened. The sharp-faced man that murdered my parents walked in, a shit-eating grin etched on his face. He squats down, grabbing my chin and forcing it up to meet his gaze, turning my head side to side, examining me like an auctioneer would a piece of livestock, before he released me and stood up, undoing my shackles. I tried to swing on him, but he stopped my hand with his free hand jabbing me with a cattle prod, my body seizing as the voltages from it crackled through my body, tearing a raw scream from me before he pulled it away. 2 cultists pulled me up and followed the devil-faced man as he walked out, dragging me behind him. It was then that I realized that I wore no shirt, naked from the waist up. I assumed that the rest of my things were also missing, which didn't help my growing panic as we headed down a dreadfully familiar hallway, torches lit in their sconces, casting a tame, muted glow as we went. We approached the eldritch wooden doors, which opened on their own, and into an impressively decorated cathedral. Tapestries of a black sun on a blue background hung from the walls, and at the center of the massive room were pews that ran 360 degrees around the entire room. Dozens upon dozens of robed cultists stood in the spanning rows, cloaked in black with different masks on their faces. Though I swore I saw tendrils peeking out from robes, sleeves, masks, and other parts of their standing forms. At the center of it all was the portal, with the crimson-robed high priest standing before it. I was thrown down at the priest's feet, vision blurring as my forehead bounced off the granite, before I was lifted up and placed on my knees. The high priest looked down at me, his golden mask distorting my visage as I gazed into it. He then spoke, not only to me, but to the congregation as well.
Our wayward lamb has returned to us, brothers and sisters. He who hath avoided death and returned, bearing the mark of the storyteller himself.
The congregation cheered raucously as the priest spread his arms, welcoming the celebration before he closed a hand into a fist and silenced them before he spoke again.
Since he bears the mark, he shall be the one to lead us into the great void.
Another round of applause and cheering as the priest walked to the portal and opened the tome I saw in the compartment before I was knocked silly. And at that moment, it all clicked into place. Without thinking, I screamed his name.
Solomon!
The chamber became deathly quiet, save for the subtle sounds of knives loosening in their scabbards and weapon safeties being clicked off. The high priest slowly turns to face me before he removed his mask and lowered his hood. Solomon Pandey staring back at me with a sad expression on his face.
I was hoping you wouldn't put it together, my boy, but it seems you have.
Tears welled up in my eyes. I trusted this man. My parents trusted him.
You sent your fucking dogs to them, didn't you? You fucking killed them. I'm gonna fucking rip your tongue out.
My anger-filled screams fell on deaf ears, it seemed, and only ceased when a guard cracked me in the back of the head, sending me into a dazed stupor, vision swimming. Solomon squatted down to meet my level, his voice soft and regretful. "I am sorry it came to that, Matthew. I did not realize that Cain would kill them, but according to Cain, your father shot first. I disciplined Cain thoroughly. Don't you worry." But that wasn't enough. I glared at Solomon and hissed through bloody teeth.
"When I get free, I'm gonna fucking kill him. There will not be anything to bury after I'm done with him."
Solomon sighed deeply, clearly disappointed by this response. He stood up and said in a flat, emotionless voice, "You will fulfill your purpose. Nothing more." And with that, he began to chant, the profane ritual just beginning. Through my boiling fury, I prayed that Fletcher and his people were close. If not, I'm so fucked. One way to find out. Chapter 11. Deep within the dense forest outside of Point Pleasant, a trio of armored cultists walked close to the dark river that flowed close to the pathway they used for their patrols. Eventually, they reached an old boathouse, and one of the patrolling cultists stepped away for a smoke, stepping into the boathouse to do so. The sun had set already, darkening the land around in pitch blackness, so when the attack came, it was brutal and fast. A wolf-headed attacker quickly surfaced and rammed his knife into the smoking cultist's throat, his wide eyes meeting the ice-blue ones of his killer as he choked on the blackened steel and his own blood before Fletcher King sliced sideways, partially decapitating his victim. He pulled himself up onto the boathouse's deck before slipping a suppressed H&K USP from his holster, anticipating the other two to investigate the sound of their comrade splashing into the murky waters of the river. His free hand slipped a throwing knife from his left boot, creeping left as the lantern beam approached the doorway, laying in wait. When the remaining two goons entered, he struck, burying the throwing knife in the rear cultist and firing thrice with his sidearm, one of the bullets shattering the lantern and allowing the dark to consume his victims. He holstered his pistol and pressed his claw-tipped gloved finger to his ear.
Talon to Eli, 3 down. Spectre 1 is in position on Overwatch. Regrouping with Talons 2 and 3. Then we will proceed to retrieve call sign Templar. Over.
Ashton's voice was crystal clear when a response came in as Fletcher left the boathouse, continuing up the footpath.
Solid, Talon 1. The others are in position. Talon 2 has your gear, so you don't have to worry about being naked when you proceed. Continue on to your objective. Evil Eye out.
Fletcher grimaced as he trudged along, noting her quip about being naked. He wasn't actually nude, but he had been swimming and disabling perimeter sensors for the past 2 hours, and swimming in full battle rattle would be laborious, so he elected to swim in his combat pants, combat shirt, his lightweight body armor, and his custom-made fast combat helmet, complete with a wolf head mask that fastened neatly to the neck of his combat armor, sealing his whole head inside, as well as only being equipped with his knives and suppressed pistol. He quickened his pace, avoiding staying on the main road in case any more patrols happened to be on the path. Under normal circumstances, Fletcher wouldn't be able to see a thing, but with his second head, he can see perfectly, just like the animal it's molded after. So he had no issue traversing the dense foliage. His heads-up display pinged the distance to his team's objective. 100 meters out, and closer to it, 20 meters out to his team. So he picked up the pace, the other two coming into view soon enough. Jason's golden dragon eyes glittered as Fletcher crouched next to him, and without a word, Jason unshouldered the pack on his back and nodded to Fletcher, who began to suit up. Fletcher pulled on his plate carrier and inserted the armor plates into said carrier, assembling his XM-177E rifle, and stuffed additional magazines into his vest. After he was done, he slung the backpack over his back, tightened the straps, and pressed his fingers to his ear.
Evil Eye, this is Talon 1. I've met up with Talons 2 and 3. We're heading out towards our objective. Keep us updated. Talon 1 out.
He flicked his comm device to another channel and spoke.
Spectre 1, this is Talon 1. We're on the move. Weapons free on anyone you know won't be seen, unless I say otherwise. How copy? Over.
Adler's voice replied back, smooth and measured.
Solid, Fletch. I'll keep an eye on you.
Assured by Adler's words, Fletcher made a motion with his hands to move, and so they did. Like specters in the night, their HUDs providing cat's eyes for increased visibility. The faint sound of the ammo belt on Jason's belt-fed AR-10, which he affectionately named the Experimental Machine Gun, or XMG, caused Fletcher to wince. The gentle clink a tad bit too loud in the darkness. He shot a look with his icy eyes to Jason, who rolled his golden ones, before locking the belt in place with a tightening of the bolt hold, before following Fletcher and Allison in step, until Fletcher held up a fist. The trio crouched as they overlooked what looked like an abandoned barrasca at the edge of the mountain range. They saw a good amount of guards milling about, powerful floodlights lighting substantial areas of the property up. Fletcher cursed, keying his comm device.
Evil Eye, this is Talon 1. This place is fucking packed. I count over a dozen goons out there. How widespread are these guys?
Ashton didn't respond for a minute, but when she did, her response was less than comforting.
According to rumors, perhaps all of Appalachia is home to this sect. There's no real original home.
Fletcher closes his eyes and exhales long and slow before responding.
Copy. We're going to try and infill without drawing suspicion. Adler, pinging an entry.
And he highlights a service tunnel entrance, to which Adler confirms by a green LED lighting up on his HUD. Fletcher nods to himself, and he descends the rampart, crouching low. He and the other two moved like ghosts, slicing throats when they could conceal the dead. Adler's M110 rifle coughed, and a guard in a tower dropped silently, and two more followed near the service tunnel. Fletcher, Jason, and Allison crouched near the door, waiting for their fourth. After what felt like an eternity, Adler came into view, her ghillie suit replaced with her veteran Ranger duster and her M110, which was now sporting an ACOG optic for indoor fighting, as well as a shorter suppressor. Fletcher nods and opens the door, then Talon makes entry to retrieve their charge. They won't leave one of their own behind. The four-man team had already gone down 2 floors when they started to notice changes in the architecture. Rough rock walls gave way to smooth stone bricks, dirt to granite floors almost seamlessly, if it had not been for the mining machinery and evidence of demolitions. Fletcher stepped over a cultist after shooting him in the back thrice with his rifle, tapping his comm device for the 3rd time. And when nothing came back, he looked back to his team.
No comms. We're on our own. Hopefully she'll deploy one of her drones to follow us, but if not, we need to take this slower. Who knows what's waiting for us on the other side?
The trio behind him nod, hefting their weapons and following Fletcher in a rough wedge, sweeping rooms as they went, occasionally popping a sleeping cultist as they napped in their cots. It was brutal work, but they weren't taking chances. These sick fucks were responsible for the 21 others that had gone missing, and Matthew will not be the 22nd. Fletcher winced in pain and flexed one of his hands, feeling the familiar, yet unpleasant, under his fingernails, but forced it down, ignoring the discomfort. No, Fletcher thought to himself. Not yet. Not in front of Matthew. He isn't ready to see me like that. He knew that allowing his anger to get away from him would lead to unwanted results. He regained focus as they came to a grand set of halls and stairs, and he signaled for a halt, running several scenarios through his head before he spoke in a hushed hiss.
Adler, Jason, take the middle tier. Take up positions for cover fire. Allison, with me, on the ground floor. We'll locate where Templar is in conjunction with us before we act. Remember, we are severely outnumbered, so do not engage until I say otherwise. Got it?
Jason and Adler nod before slinking away, while Fletcher and Allison continue on towards the grand room. Through the bars and the windows and behind statues, they saw dozens upon dozens of gathered worshippers present, wearing black robes with silver masks of varying ghastly visages. Fletcher quickly scans the room
before he spotted a red-robed cultist, presumably the High Priest, or whatever adjacent title would be in this case, and knelt in front of him was Matthew, shirtless and weaponless. A second sweep of the room located a second target, the sharp-faced man that they saw in the security footage who held Matthew's dragon-headed staff, Matthew's Glock belt to his hip, and the silver stiletto knife in a sheath on the back of his waist. The cult leader was spewing some kind of praise to whatever deity they worshipped, while motioning to the assembly of stones next to Matthew. It didn't take a genius to put together that this was the portal Matthew describes the first time he was here. Fletcher pinged the space directly behind Matthew, both the upper pews and behind the swirling portal, which would be the perfect cover for them to creep up on them. With one last exhale of resolve, Talon moves in, like predators stalking their kill. This is gonna get good, Fletcher thought to himself, a toothy, predatory grin fluttering across his lips, the wolf head hiding it from view, feeling wiry black fur growing under his combat jacket's sleeves. This is gonna get really good. Chapter 12. I watched in horrified awe as the portal swirls in front of my eyes once again. The rolling purple and black void seems almost hypnotic, but in a dangerous, predatory way. I was so enthralled by it, I didn't even hear Solomon preaching to his profane congregation until a rough hand on the back of my neck snapped me back to reality.
And with this offering, the Master will be sated once again.
The foul gathering cheered, but when I listened to them, I heard something wrong. Under the raucous cheers and roars, I swore I heard clicks, chitters, whines, and other ungodly sounds that tingled the cacophony of sounds. Most, if not all of those gathered, may not be human, and that was going to bode poorly for me. I struggled against Solomon's grasp, and Cain came to help him, dragging me towards the portal as the crowd chanted in a language I did not understand. Vidith laughed, and I saw his eyes within the vortex, my thrashing intensifying as I saw jaws part, jagged teeth giving way to a black gullet, my heart threatening to give out, and when the two heaved me forward, I hit the ground on the other side. I had passed through the portal, unharmed, but the gathering crowd cheered and my heart skipped a beat. They believed I passed through to my demise. I go to bolt, only to run into someone, and before a terrified scream leaves my throat, a hand clamps around my mouth. Icy eyes met mine, and relief washed through me. It was Fletcher fucking King. The wolf-headed merc winked at me and motioned for me to keep quiet, and when my eyes drifted past him, I saw Allison crouched behind me, and when she motioned up, I saw Jason and Adler posted up. I smiled, a smile of relief and hope, and when I looked at Fletcher, I whispered in my ruined-sounding voice, "That prick in red is the one who put the hit out on my folks, and that sharp-faced dickhead is there too." Fletcher nodded, and he clicked off the safety on his rifle before moving into position, lifting the XM-177E in preparation. The portal closed, revealing myself, Fletcher, and Allison. The crowd abruptly growing silent. Solomon turned to meet my eyes, anger twisting his face when he realized I wasn't dead. He opens his mouth to speak, but Fletcher growls in a voice I'd never heard from him before, one like a growling wolf.
"Playtime's over, fuckhead. Hands in the air."
Solomon sneers, baring his teeth in defiance before he twitches his hand towards his side, where a massive Mark 19 Desert Eagle sat nestled in a black leather holster. Fletcher fired once, and even with a suppressor on his rifle, the sound was deafening, my hearing slightly muffled from the sudden discharge. The 5.56 green-tipped bullet struck Solomon in the center of his forehead, punching through his head and dropping him to his back like a bag of potatoes, the still traveling round burying itself in the wall at the back of the room. An eerie stillness filled the chamber, Kane's face twisted in rage as Allison took his weapon from him at gunpoint, while Fletcher kept the crowd from moving with his own rifle, with help from the two high above. When I got my things back, we began to back away, wishing to escape without incident, until the devilish congregation began to laugh. Soft at first, but slowly beginning to build. Kane himself also began to laugh, joining the fervent chorus of howling laughter, while Solomon began to get up from where he lay on the ground. Fletcher looked mortified, even with his wolf head, his artificial lichen jaws agape as Solomon stood up fully, the through and through hole in his head slowly stitching back together as if on its own. When the wound was finally sealed, he spoke with a voice of pure annoyance.
There are very few things that annoy or hurt me, but that fucking hurt.
Gone was the arrogant tone and was replaced by searing rage. He looked over his shoulder and spoke loudly.
Save the boy. Dispose of the rest.
With a flash of pure white light, Solomon Pandey is gone, and the ritual room erupted into chaos. Fletcher and Allison leapt behind cover as armed and armored guards emerged from above the back rows, opening fire with their rifles, the gathering under them hooting and cheering all the while. I had scrambled back and fell behind the portal, narrowly avoiding the hail of gunfire that sailed my way, despite Solomon's orders not to harm me. I ripped the Glock from my hip, fumbling with the safety before holding it in both hands, Allison's MP5K rattling as she sent a short burst at the gunman. Fletcher was screaming to Ash for support, but judging by his crinkled muzzle and angry look, nothing seemed to be getting through. He shouted over the roar of Jason's XMG, making himself heard to me and Allison.
All right, new plan. We fight our way to the upper floors where we can call for Ash to bring the terabyte. Go for headshots, save your ammo. We can't get caught up down here. Matthew, stick with me. Jason, Adler, wrap around to the upper floor staircase. Allison, cover our rear. Go.
Adler tossed down a pair of slim cylinders that had bumps throughout them, and Allison yelled, "Flashbang!" before they went off, blinding both the congregation and the gunman. Fletcher and Allison broke cover and rushed forward, their guns rattling as they cut down knife-wielding cultists and gunmen alike. I scrambled up, but paused to grab the grimoire that had fallen off its pedestal before chasing after the two, the massive tome tucked under my left arm while my pistol was in my right. In my coat, my shotgun was absent, but Kane may still have it, and my walking staff bounced against my back as I ran to catch up. The chanting mass did not move to attack, as if they were rooted permanently in place. As we passed, I saw glimpses of writhing masses of black and green flesh under their robes, and I redoubled my efforts to follow my saviors. Far above, Jason and Adler moved with us, shooting down at those that we passed in our flight. After I rejoined Fletcher and Allison at the doors leading out into what I presumed was the hallway, Fletcher counted down with his fingers, me soon realizing that his claws were retractable before he kicked the doors open, sending two cultists onto their backs. The wolf casually walked past them, shooting each one in the head with his USP as he did so. Allison and I followed, sticking close as we jogged up the halls towards the staircase that led up towards the Baraska, shooting all the while. Jason and Adler joined us at some point as we burst out into the dig site, taking cover behind containers and machinery as we began to take fire. Kane pointed to us and screamed,
Kill them! Kill them! They defiled our holy place!
While firing his Beretta 93R in our direction. I peeked around the crate I hid behind and saw my shotgun slung across his back, and I felt my rage boil up again, remembering what that bastard did to me, what he took from me. I set the tome next to Allison, making sure she didn't see me doing so, before I began to sneak towards Kane from the side, holstering my Glock on my hip before unslinging the staff, cracking one cultist in the head with the dragon head before dashing towards another that noticed me, taking his jaw almost clean off with another swing. While there was a lull in the action for me, I decided to take off my ruined shirt and replaced it with his, pulling on an armored vest as well before finishing the new fit with the dying man's Gorka 4 jacket. Fully decked out now, I continued moving, Adler keeping me covered as she sniped anyone who tried to shoot me.
It wasn't until I climbed up onto the container Kane was standing on, charging him while I swung my staff towards his head. Kane leapt back, my staff narrowly missing its target, but I closed the distance before he could lift his gun. The butt of my stick knocked the pistol free from his hand, and I followed up with a savage headbutt to his face, shattering his nose. He cursed angrily and lashed out with a foot, driving me back as it connected with my belly, creating distance between us. Once more, I surged forward, rage fueling my assault. So much so, I couldn't hear Vidith's manic laughter under the roaring of blood in my ears. 2 of my strikes landed, but the last missed, giving Kane the opportunity to disarm me and send the staff towards the ground. I grabbed onto him, groping for the shotgun as he punched me in the guts twice, thanking the vest for lessening the strikes before he threw me off with an angry roar. To my delight, the shotgun came free with me as I slammed onto my back, dazed slightly as Kane went for his pistol, forcing myself up just in time to meet him. As he raised his pistol, I brought the shotgun to my hip, death gripping it with both hands, before we both fired at the same time. Both barrels of my shotgun spitting fire as Kane's bullet struck me in the chest. We both tumbled off the container onto the ground below, pain blossoming from my chest. But when I pulled open the jacket and ran my fingers across the affected area, I was relieved to find that the vest did its job and stopped the 9mm bullet in its tracks, though I'll definitely be sore later. Fletcher ran up to me, dropping down to check on me, but when he saw the vest, a grin stretched across his muzzle.
You're just full of surprises, aren't you, Pop?
He pulled me onto my feet, and I took notes of the long, fur-like hair on his arm under his sleeve before I responded with a grin of my own.
Got his ass. Both barrels. He ain't getting back up after that.
My words died in my throat, and the sound of screeching metal was heard. Great claws, and, more horrifically, insectoid legs ripped a forklift and container apart. Fletcher pulled me behind him as Talon took a battle position, weapons raised at the threat. Before us was a hulking monstrosity I could only describe as something out of the bowels of the warp. A hulking arachnid body made of metal, flesh, and black tendrils. Its sharp legs tipped in wicked metal points, while the hairy spines were made of sharp rebar, its abdomen and thorax pulsing masses of bloody red and black flesh, oozing a nauseating black fluid. A wicked stinger made up of a forklift fork, which dribbled a yellow-green goo that I will assume is either acid, a paralytic, or a venom. And most horrifying of all, familiar, throbbing red V's, pulsing on different parts of its insectoid body. But that was where the insect part ended, and the human, or what was once human, began. Do any of you know what a Trider is? No. Well, to make this quick, they have the lower half of a spider and the upper half of a dark elf worshipper of Loth. Take that and multiply it by 10 and throw in some body horror to boot. The once human body was fused with multiple machine parts and metal fragments, a throbbing, red-hot V in the center of his chest, like a demonic brand. 4 arms stretched out, 2 humanoid ones with claw-tipped fingers and 2 made of clamps and metal. Flailing black barb-tipped tendrils flailed and thrashed like a dozen angry vipers from his back. And finally, his head. Kane's now 8 eyes glowing with pure rage, throbbing in tandem with the V's on his chest and spider body when he roared, his mouth split open, 2 monstrous mandibles unfurling from within.
I'm going to rip you all to bloody fucking pieces.
Chapter 13. Fletcher and the others opened fire, their guns roaring as they lit Kane up with their combined might, only for their bullets to ping off the thick metal armor around its torso and abdomen. Fletcher called into his comlink again, screaming for Ashton to send something to help us, all while the Trider from hell screamed and slashed its front legs towards us.
Jason and Allison dove right to avoid the thrashing limb, and I stumbled back, cursing loudly as I barely missed getting decapitated from an errant leg. I ripped my pistol from its holster, lifted it, and began to squeeze the trigger, firing the Glock until its slide was locked back. All 17 rounds fired, and not a fucking scratch on it. Kane wheeled around, screeching as his 8 eyes locked onto mine.
And you, I'll make sure you never see the fucking light of day again.
Kane made a beeline towards me, its mechanical legs skittering across the rocky ground. I patted myself for a magazine that didn't exist, and narrowly dodged stabbing legs, rolling along the ground to avoid being skewered. I slammed the pistol into my holster and shot forward, making a dive for a metal cart lid, grasping it and heaving it around with all my strength to stop a stab, the point mere inches from my chest. I shoved myself away, slamming on my back as Kane threw the lid away, raising his stinger to strike. I covered my head, screaming, and before he could stab me with the foul appendage, the sound of a loud electric discharge zipped over my head. Kane reeled back, screaming in pain, and when I uncovered my face, I saw Ashton wielding a very prototype-looking weapon that looked like a dollar store Wonderwaff. The coils and mini Tesla arcs on the sides crackling with pure electricity, which was fed from a power pack on her back that looked like a modified M2 flamethrower tank. She fired the Tesla rifle again, making the same zipping sound I just heard, but Kane narrowly avoided that one, hissing angrily as its mandibles clicked in its mangled mouth. A pair of hands pulled me onto my feet, Fletcher patting the dust out of my jacket before offering a Glock magazine to me.
You still want to take this bastard down? Now's your chance.
I took the magazine from him and reloaded, quite clumsily I might add, and when the slide snapped forward again, I exhaled, nodding to Fletcher, though inwardly I spoke directly to Vidith. You want a story? I'll give you a fucking story. Kane snarled at us, angry to see that he was starting to slowly lose his advantage, his 8 eyes flicking in all directions to see if he could fling anything at us before he settled on a pair of nail guns. Oily black tendrils slithered towards them and engulfed them into his profane mass, the dual tools manifesting into his lower pair of arms, taking aim at us before letting loose a volley of nails in our direction. Myself and Allison ducked left, the two of us firing as we went. I'll admit, I'm no John Wick, but damn did it feel good to see my shots landing, my practice with my dad coming back to me slowly. Fletcher and Jason went right, Jason laying down withering fire with his XMG, the .308 caliber rounds making significant dents in Kane's armor, even piercing through it in some places. Ashton ducked down, charging her Tesla rifle for another shot, only for her to curse as an indicator on the rifle began to flash.
Fuck, it's overheating. I gotta change the heat sink. Cover me.
Fletcher repeated the order and opened fire, Jason's XMG roaring as he sent more bullets towards Kane, sending the monstrosity reeling, its massive front legs protecting its humanoid body from the onslaught. Our bullets didn't seem to be doing much, even with Jason's XMG shooting .308, and just as I started to think we weren't coming out of this in one piece, I spotted our saving grace. A crate of dynamite.
Fletcher!
I yelled, pointing at the crate. The wolf-headed man understood immediately and began to bait Kane towards him while grabbing a decently large bundle of dynamite from the crate. Kane roared and charged Fletcher, not realizing what he was holding before the lit bundle flew from Fletcher's hand, flipping end over end towards the demon. Kane's eyes widen in horror just as the dynamite explodes, shattering his torso armor to reveal the soft insides, the amalgamation of flesh, metal, and dark, blasphemous magic reeling and howling. We had a chance now, and when Talon pressed the attack, Kane swung one of his massive legs, sending the others scrambling. Ashton ditched the Tesla gun to get out of the way in time, leaving it sitting on the ground a few feet from me. A reckless idea formed, and before I was registering what I was doing, I was hauling ass towards the fallen weapon, quickly and haphazardly pulling on the power back and leveling the rifle, taking aim at Kane. When he turned in my direction, beginning to lower his legs from their defensive stance, I was charging the gun up, pushing the heatsink to its absolute limit for one final shot. Our eyes connected, and I yelled with a mixture of rage, delight, and relief.
It's time to ride the lightning, motherfucker!
And I fired. the arc of pure energy striking Kane in the chest, sending hundreds of concentrated volts throughout his body, from his bones to his limbs, and eventually, after his eyeballs burst from their sockets, his head exploded in a fantastic spurt of gore and black sludge. At long last, the bastard that ripped my family to shreds fell, headless and dead. I dropped the smoldering rifle, the power pack empty, and the heat sink in the rifle melted as a result of the overcharge, a sense of absolute relief flooding through me, until a slithering voice ruins my reverie.
Wow, I'm impressed. You're not completely spineless after all. Bravo, Matthew. Bravo.
Vidith glared at me, red eyes glowing with displeasure at my triumph, the copy of me used, now a tad bit more decayed, his lips permanently pulled back to show off even more gnarled teeth, skin pulled tight against his skull. I stood my ground.
Yeah, I do have a spine, Vidith. You fucked with my life, killed my family, threatened my friends. Yeah, I'm gonna grow a pair before something bigger kills me, so get used to it.
A snarl leaves the demon, but I turned my back to him, going over to Fletcher, who slaps me across the back with a hearty laugh.
Damn, Pop. You fried his ass good. Nice shot.
The rest of Talon congratulates me with pats on the back and praises, filling me with even more confidence. I looked behind me at Vidith and gave him the middle finger, to which he faded away with a threatening line.
You'll know fear, Mitsu. I'll make sure you feel the darkness.
We gathered up what we could and got the fuck out of Dodge before the police got there, slinking away to our den to recoup and recover, but also celebrate our victory. Finally, things are looking up. Epilogue. The sound of rain gently pattering on the cabin's roof slowly roused me from my sleep, earning a groan as I sat up and stretched. On his bed in the corner, Jericho lifted his head and huffed softly, telling me that I needed to feed him or he'd hate me for eternity. I rolled out of bed, grabbed my glasses, and went about feeding him before I pulled on my Gorka jacket and ventured out into the gentle mist that fell from the clouds above. I followed the smell of breakfast to find Jason flipping eggs and hash browns on the Blackstone, giving me a warm smile as I walked up.
Morning, Matt. Sleep well?
I smiled and took the plate he offered me, nodding my head.
Yeah, like a rock under the snow.
Me and him talked for a bit, catching up on the events of the early morning until Fletcher called from the main building.
Hey, Matt, Jason, come here. You're gonna want to see this.
Me and Jason looked at each other before Jason shut off the Blackstone, and we went inside the main building. We entered to see Ashton typing madly away at the keyboard, chasing what looked like a transmission. When she finally caught it and isolated it and began to play it, the robotic words monotone and hollow. 10, 13, 44, 17, 66, 12. The transmission repeated, Fletcher watching and listening intently as this happened, and I have zero idea what this was about. I looked to Fletcher, and he murmured,
Well, I'll be God's damned. The fucking number station.
Now that I knew about, having heard about the one overseas number station, UVB-76, which plays nonsense most times. Ashton tapped away furiously at the keys, trying to translate it to little success. She swore and threw her hands up, defeated.
Damn it! How in the fuck are we gonna do this? Does anyone here know how to translate number broadcasts?
Fletcher was the one to respond, his sarcastic tone evident.
Unless someone is secretly Alex Mason,
No one can translate that broadcast, so we're gonna need actual hardware to crack this code. There was an argument among them, and I saw them not as mercs or freedom fighters, but as people. People who had lived, who were pulled together by some means. The only place we can get hardware like this is from the military or some similar entity, but I have no idea where to start. Fletcher was cut off when he heard the sound of a vehicle pull up to our campsite, causing all within to freeze.
Adler and Fletcher armed themselves with a .45 long Colt cartridge converted Colt 1851 Navy revolver for Fletcher and a pair of CZ-75 auto pistols for Adler before they stormed out of the door. I followed, drawing my new shotgun, a TP-82, which effectively was a double-barreled shotgun pistol, to behold a Jeep with a man standing in front of it. He wore all black, with a GP-7 Soviet gas mask over his face, and he held his hands up, even as Fletcher and Adler yelled at him to kneel down and put his hands behind his head. Once he did so, Fletcher disarmed him of 2 Stechkin APS pistols and a large Siberian taiga machete before he stepped back. "All right, just who the fuck are you, and how did you find us?" The masked man chuckled and spoke in a thick Russian accent.
Your electronic signature isn't that hard to trace, though you're fortunate that it was me that found you, and not Rampage.
Fletcher and Adler looked at one another, and when I stepped into view, calling to them to see if they were okay, the masked man looked to me, and my scar throbbed dully. Vidith churred in pure, unadulterated glee, and the man reached up towards his mask and pulled it off his face, revealing a horrifically scarred visage, a scar in the shape of a V. He smiled, a vile, sharp-toothed smile, and spoke.
As for who I am, my name is Isaac Reykjavik, but they call me Subject 21.
Braziers flickered within the massive chamber of obsidian, starstone, and star steel, 5 thrones sitting around a seeing pool. Each throne is made of different materials, from gold, granite, and bronze to roots, flowers, and overgrown skulls. 5 individuals, all robed and hooded, rose from their respective thrones, the seeing pool frozen on the moment Isaac revealed himself. The one in gold and white growled, his voice a rumble of pure charisma and seduction.
Well, isn't that something? The Dark One is getting older.
Another one with antlers and robed in moss responded next.
The current host and the one that returned are still people. We can despise the deity,
Not the pawns. A third female cloaked in fire hissed.
Bullshit. They're just as complicit as any other host or follower.
A fourth did not speak. Their many eyes and reptilian snouts watched the first 3 begin to argue, before the regent of the gathering slammed the butt of her staff against the ground, her voice loud and clear.
Enough. We will not solve this by bickering. Yes, the Dark One is back, but he is contained for now. We must prepare, and soon. You all have your tasks. See them through. Now, go.
The regent slams her staff down again, and the other 4 are sent back to their own realms before she sighed and looked into the pool at the unfortunate humans with a sad expression.
I hope you two don't find yourselves here. I can't guarantee that you'll be safer here.
Even as she stared, the braziers went out, casting her in darkness. I hope you all enjoyed this story. This was a massive labor of passion from Fletcher Thorne. Rather than speaking on his behalf, allow me to introduce the author himself, who has a few words for you listeners.
Good morning, good afternoon, and or good evening, everyone. My name is Fletcher Thorne, and I would like to thank all of you for coming out and listening to this labor of love and the start of a new epic. While it isn't on the same level as Threshold, Vampire, and even New Wilderness, those epics aided in my inspiration to try my hand at something great and to call my own. I would like to thank Vidith for allowing me to be part of this creation, part of this world, and I would also like to thank my friends and my family for encouraging me to follow this momentous dream. Worry not though, my friends. You won't see the last of me or my creations. That I promise. May your winds be fair and your days prosperous.